This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene at the end of each episode, or join us for our monthly movie club Zoom call where we discuss a film together, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
It is raining. It's apparently we're going to get 44 hours of rain in Christchurch.
Oh my gosh.
Over this next 2 days.
Yeah, at work today I heard people talking about it's like the most severe weather storm warnings we've had in XYZ amount of time. And I was too busy writing up the plan for this episode and watching a live stream you did to pay attention to that. So,
well, that's true. That's a good thing to bring up, actually, as I did a live stream of how to edit a podcast that you can see on the Cult Popture YouTube page. It's about an hour and a half long. Probably don't need to watch it past the 30-minute mark. But it is there if you want to check out how the process is done. But yeah, the rain, you will possibly be able to hear the rain because I live in an attic. But I think if you watch the how to edit a podcast video, you'll see the denoiser that I put on the audio. I think the rain is the same like frequency as white noise, right. So it can take it out. Or it has done in the past anyway. But hey, guess whose washing is out on the line? This guy.
Oh, you.
Points
wow,
to
okay.
south.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
And has been out there for a couple of days because things do not dry in the winter. It's wet clothes season.
I drop my washing off at this lovely little woman who cleans, dries, and folds it for me.
She sounds like something from a fairy tale, like some kind of.
I leave it on my doorstep, and when I come back in the morning, it's washed, dried, and folded. But yeah, no, it's $32, I think. So, and I do that every 2 weeks.
Yeah. 32. Then maybe it's worth doing something like that.
It is 100% is. Because also the thing is that it's like you drop it off on like a Saturday morning, pick it up Saturday evening, or whatever. Like I can even work it around my work hours. Sometimes drop it off on my way to work, pick it up on my way home, and yeah.
Well, as someone who doesn't leave the house very often and can't drive, that might be a bit harder for me.
Well, what is this, AJ? What are we doing?
This is called Preamble. It's 90 minutes of preamble. No, this is film franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast. This is a little podcast we've been doing since June of 2016, where every 2 weeks since June of 2016, that's not entirely true, but I'm not going to explain why it's not entirely true. We have...
Why is it not entirely true?
Well, because we've had small breaks. So it's not every 2 weeks.
And also there was a podcast last week.
Okay. So every 2 weeks we watch and discuss a film franchise either selected at random or voted on by our patrons, and this is part 2 of last week's Fortnight episode. So it's a 2 week long fortnight. No, a 1 week long fortnight, I guess would be the correct way to put that. Where last week, voted on by our patrons, we did the original films in the Planet of the Apes series, plus the Tim Burton garbage dump that is a remake. And this week because it felt right to do them separately, we're doing the Planet of the Apes reboot series.
Yeah, so we're going to be calling them the reboot series. You might have heard them the prequel trilogy because of when they take place in the chronology. And and then as we discovered last week, they're kind of also remakes of the latter 2 films in the original pentology.
Yeah, and in a sense, it's more like these are prequels to a remake of the original film that hasn't been made.
Yeah.
That's what it's like, because there's no one out there who thinks that Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a prequel to the Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes movie. They're so stylistically different. It's clear that it's like...
Yeah, I mean, there might be people that think
that's a good point, but
the public is pretty stupid.
So essentially, the reason we call these the Reboot Trilogy or the Reboot series is because they're not really prequels, especially because stuff gets changed. The timeline gets shrunk down a bit, I think, as well, if we're to believe characters who share names of other characters in the originals are supposed to be the same people and things like that. So it's taking what we know of the Planet of the Apes series, or even just the original movie, and going, what happened before that? But then also not pertaining to specific canon.
How did we end up here? Yeah, so this was kicked off with Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 2011, directed by Rupert Wyatt. Then we had Dawn of the Planet of the Apes 3 years later, and then War for the Planet of the Apes 3 years later again. Both of those second two were directed by Matt Reeves. And yeah, I mean, I like having these fun trilogies or series when it's like an even amount of time between each film. It makes it feel very pure, I think. And that's, like you were talking about, it's so nice to keep the Reboot Trilogy as its own episode because it's so nicely self-contained.
And in a podcast about franchises where we talk so often about what's the best franchise and we've ranked them and we're going to re-rank them and all that, like this is kind of quite an important one in modern discourse of film franchises, I think, because it's quite highly regarded and does a lot of things that you don't really see very often in this sphere. Quick question though, does it bother you that, and I'm not talking about the quality of the films, but is there like a little worm in your brain, the fact that the second two are directed by one person? And it's not a different director or the same director for all three?
I don't know, like the stylistically across them all, they are actually incredibly consistent for swapping directors. And yeah, it really feels like Matt Reeves did justice to what Rupert Wyatt started, you know? And so
I'd say he built on and perfected what personally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like that's a good way of putting it, and that's not like to shit on Rupert Wyatt or anything like that. It's
what
just
else
like
has he done?
Rupert Wyatt did The Escapist, then Rise of the Planet of the Apes was the second film,
right? Okay,
and then he did The Gambler, Captive State, and he's working on Storm King and Slipping into Darkness.
Never heard of any of those movies except for Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah, but it's weird. Like I feel like I'd heard of Rupert Wyatt, but I guess just through this. But but yeah, Matt Reeves obviously is doing a Batman film,
and he did Cloverfield as well.
Yeah,
not J.J. Abrams. It was Matt Reeves. So I think it doesn't annoy me, but it is. I think that the second two have more of a clear. Like, they feel very distinct from the first one, I think.
Sure.
And that's not necessarily because of the director. It's more because of when they take place. But it is weird. You don't often see it where it's this way. Usually in trilogies, it's like someone stayed for the first two and then fucked off for the third. But here you go. There's the
yeah, and I think maybe I don't mind it because of that. Because it feels like Rupert Wyatt was like, I'm just going to make what I think is a good film. And then Matt Reeves comes in and goes, well, I know how to turn this into a perfect trilogy. And whereas like someone doing, this is two good films, and then someone says, oh, I'm going to wrap it all up in one that wasn't involved. I feel like that's more of an offense than this way around.
Yeah. You're either a Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy, a Star Wars sequel trilogy, or someone directed the first
Iron Man.
Or an Iron Man trilogy. There you go. Where it's great example. Where it's two directors involved in three films, and each it's different ratios each time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, what is Rise of the Planet of the Apes about?
Okay, so it is presumably set in 2011.
It is. It's set in present day. Which was, at the time, 2011, 10 years after 9/11.
Oh, very true.
And 10 years before today.
Nice. And so it is about James Franco, whose character name I never picked up.
Will Rodman.
Really? I had no idea that was his name. Will Rodman. Crazy. For a character who I would have thought I'd recognize his name.
I'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, Will Rodman.
It just never, I feel like it never comes up.
I just said, there, on the top of my head, that's not on my notes.
Well, there you go. Maybe you just paid more attention than I did. So Will Rodman is a scientist, and they're working on a cure for Alzheimer's by using apes as like test patients, and they have a breakthrough with one of the female apes that they capture from the jungle, where she is showing cognitive improvement. She's getting smarter. And they call her Bright Eyes, which is a cute little reference to what they called Charlton Heston in the first film.
And she's called Bright Eyes because the only side effect at the time that's known of the ALZ-112, which is the drug they give the monkeys, the apes, is the little flecks of green noticeable in the irises of their eyes, and that's kind of like one of those. It's very subtle, but it becomes like one of the defining things of the smarter apes.
Yeah, very, very tasteful fan service in this series as well, compared to something like the Hobbit trilogy.
Fuck yeah.
You know?
But one of the best, we'll get to it.
Oh, sure.
One of the best examples of fan service I've ever seen in a film is in this film.
Sick. But one day it all goes wrong when Bright Eyes goes crazy, goes apeshit,
Nice.
and they have to kill her. Or she gets killed, rather, by, like, security. And it turns out she was going crazy because she'd secretly been pregnant and gave birth to a little baby chimp.
Women.
And and they don't want to put it down, so Will takes this little chimp under his wing. He takes him home to his father, who has Alzheimer's, played by John Lithgow, and they care for this chimp. They name him Caesar, and as he gets older, his intelligence is advancing. You triple that of a human child, basically.
Yeah.
Like he's learning very, very fast. He gives the same experimental medication to his father, and all of a sudden his father's Alzheimer's are cured. And the film itself is over the course of 5 years. Well, there's a 5-year jump where it comes back, and Caesar is an adolescent ape now. But he still has the wild animal instincts, and after lashing out, he's put in a sanctuary where he gets where he not only gets mistreated by the humans, but he develops a kinship with the other apes, and eventually leads an ape uprising. All the while,
an ape rising.
An ape rising, very good. All the while, the same lab have accidentally created a flu, like an incredibly deadly virus, and the end of the film is the flu spreading to the rest of the world. It's called the simian flu, and meanwhile, the apes lead an uprising and escape, and escape. They ape escape.
Thank you.
And there's a big confrontation on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and it ends with Will and Caesar saying goodbye as Caesar embraces his inner ape and flees into the forests with his chimpanzee and gorilla and orangutan
and bonobo.
Buddies. Oh,
first time we said a Cobra's a bonobo. Or bonobo,
right.
I don't know. I've never actually
bonobo.
heard.
I think it's bonobo. Yeah,
it would be those.
Proboscis. What are the ones with the big noses called?
Yeah, they're monkeys, though, aren't they?
Are they? They look like chimps. What the fuck do I know? I've been interchanging chimp and monkey my whole life until
proboscis monkey.
Right.
Big nose.
They look like a poorly drawn cartoon. They look like someone who didn't know how to draw a monkey. That's. Have I missed anything? That's where the first film ends.
Yeah, first film ends.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of this film, and what do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Okay, so first of all, I hadn't really seen it. I'd seen what I assume is the most iconic scene from it. I think I'd been in the room when it was on and caught, bits of it caught my attention.
Yeah.
But the main thing I remember was the scene I'm sure we'll talk about. And so I'd never really seen it before. And until the second one came out, I was of the belief that this didn't fare too well with critics. I don't know why I thought that, because I thought it was cool. I thought it's really, really good. The only things I can fault it on is I think the casting is real weird, and it's weird to see. Yeah, it's weird to see a great movie and you sit back and go, the casting's weird. It's not often that's what I'm picking on in a movie. It's the casting, Do you want
to elaborate on that?
I think James Franco, the current information known about him excluded, is not a good enough actor, or not the type of actor I want to see in this role. I think
he's a good actor.
He's a good actor.
And an even better person.
But I don't think he's particularly amazing in this.
Well, he was coming off an Oscar nomination for 127 Hours in 2010 in this.
That's true.
And so this was like peak Franco kind of thing.
Right,
and so it was like, yeah, it's 2011, you're doing a blockbuster, hottest name in Hollywood, you want to lock him down in your film kind of thing. And this is one of those films that I had seen it before. I missed it in the cinema, and a friend bought it for me on DVD for Christmas.
That was a nice thing for a friend to do. I don't remember the last time I bought someone a Christmas present who wasn't related to me.
No, well, we did like a little friend exchange
right,
with a few of us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we sat down and watched it, and I thought, oh, fuck, this is amazing, you know? And I'm gutted I missed it in the cinema because of some moments we'll talk about in a second. But like, it's funny that kind of everyone I know's experience with this trilogy is, oh, they're so good. And like, yeah, did you see them in the cinema? No, I saw them like ages after. I haven't seen the third one yet.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this last week. My
but like literally every single person I've spoken to has said some variation of that.
My experiences didn't see the first one properly, went to the second one because someone was paying for my ticket, loved it, never saw the third one until now. So yeah, everyone has like weird experiences with this film. I'll tell you who I think is in a similar boat in 2011 to James Franco, who wouldn't have done it but would have been a better choice than James Franco. I think Robert Downey Jr. should have played the main character in this movie.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think he suits being a little bit younger though. The character.
Interesting. That's why I went older, because
interesting. Okay, let's look at James Franco age, and then we'll look at. So he's 43. So let's go 43-year-old actors.
Wait, was he 40? Oh, he's 43 now.
Yeah. So it'd be these actors due to the linear time. You know, one year equals 1 year.
It'll be the same. Yeah.
They will be.
Thank you.
Take them back 10 years.
I get it.
Kenan Thompson. You got Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think try as hard as he did, I could never.
Jason Biggs.
Yes. Try as hard as he could, I could never detach James Franco from either the frat boy or Green Goblin. like in the roles that I enjoy him in, it's because he's being silly, with the exception of 127 Hours, but he's still kind of like a frat kind of guy in that.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is he's like a bit of a douche bro that got stuck.
So there. A douche bro he can play a really good douche, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could take him seriously as a scientist, and I think it was it's for such an important role, it feels crazy to have James Franco play that role.
Actually, do you know who was looked at was Tobey Maguire?
Yeah, okay. All right. No, seriously though, like that's all right.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to the thing with James Franco is he's like hot, right? Whereas Tobey Maguire isn't really.
Yeah. Do you know who'd be a good one actually, who was around the right age?
Who?
Lee Pace.
Oh, yes. Lee Pace channeling the energy he has in Pushing Daisies, not Halt and Catch Fire or The Hobbit. Like a very soft-spoken, caring person, I think, could have been great.
Yeah, not the same kind of like crooky kind of thing, but that kind of lovable energy.
Yeah. Lee Pace would have been great, man. That's a good call. I mean, you do have a list of applicable actors in front of you.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff to sift through.
Yeah. You
don't know
how much work I'm doing.
I'm not going to suggest Benjamin McKenzie.
Wait, he'd be all right. Ben McKenzie.
Topher Grace.
These are all... Topher Grace is maybe in the same...
Bill Hader.
Ashton Kutcher...
Ashton Kutcher's the same age as James Franco.
Ashton Kutcher isn't a good alternative to James Franco. He's not a better, he's an equivalent. That's what I'm saying. Like, right. I see them as operating the same space of how good of an actor they can be in my mind.
Well, anyway, I think we can all agree it should have been Lee Pace.
Yeah, I think we all can. Let's get back on track.
Okay, so but one interesting thing about this film is
Rotten Tomatoes. We didn't. What is the score?
What would you guess it is?
80.
82. You've been pretty good on your Apes movies, mate.
But it's not guessing, it's learning. It's understanding the language of Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's like you're like Caesar.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the Caesar of Rotten Tomatoes scores. And when I say the Caesar of something, I specifically mean the Caesar,
the monkey,
from Planet of the Apes, not Caesar from history.
Yeah,
not Julius Caesar.
Yeah. So one interesting thing about this franchise as well, although I was kind of talking about our experiences with it, is that this is one I so distinctly remember following the production of. I remember the first image that was released of James Franco in Rise of the Apes, because that's what it was called at the time. I remember them announcing a film called Caesar, which was what, they're making a new Planet of the Apes movie. It's called Caesar. And then they said, people might not just know the name Caesar. And so they called it Caesar Rise of the Apes. And then they changed it to Rise of the Apes. And then I remember the article that came out said it's been retitled to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and it being like, it's maybe a bit wordy, but it kind of fits better with the other ones, I guess.
I think that this series in general is crippled by its need to be brand recognizable, or at least the titles are. That's why you've shoved Planet of the Apes in a massive title already.
Yeah.
Our friend Adam once referred to these movies as the only movie titles he could think of that had a rhythm.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's duh, 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 duh. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. That's a great.
But yeah, it's funny that it's one of those ones that I remember following every update, and then I just didn't watch.
Yeah. That's like me with Sin City 2.
Oh yeah,
never seen it.
It's Trainspotting too. It was on your fucking most anticipated.
Yeah, never saw it.
Yeah, so the kind of the inception of this film, it's one of those things that there was talk of a sequel to Tim Burton's one for a while, but then it didn't do so well. Tim Burton didn't want to do it, so it was screenwriter Rick Jaffa who was searching through newspaper articles and came across one about pet chimpanzees that become troublesome to their owners and can't adapt to the human kind of environment. And he was like, actually, fuck, that's a pretty good idea for a Planet of the Apes movie. So he called his wife and screenwriting partner, Amanda Silva, and then they went back and forth on the idea and came up with the character of Caesar and how he would what he would exist today, like what's a realistic way that this could kind of happen. And on the whole reboot, prequel, whatever, he said that it's a reinvention. And he said if he had to pick between calling it a prequel or a reboot, he would say it's a reboot. It's a different story of, quoting him, it's a different story of who Caesar is and how he came to be. So it's really kind of hard to put a label on it. We are hopefully rebooting it. He went on to say that we really tried hard to create a story that would stand on its own and yet pay homage and honor the movies that came before us. If you're wondering about Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silva, they're an interesting screenwriting duo. So they wrote Rise and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but they also wrote Jurassic World and Mulan and Avatar 3. So it's like, so you fluked.
No, but who did we talk to? Was it Chris Weitz or someone talked to us, and it soon became clear that screenwriting is not as cut and dry as directing. Yeah. It's there are good directors and bad directors, and there are screenwriters that take jobs, and sometimes those jobs bear fruit that is good. And
sometimes those jobs are the Nutty Professor too.
Yeah, and because Chris Terrio wrote Rise of Skywalker and
Argo.
And he wrote Argo as well, but he also wrote Batman v Superman, right? So it's these are dramatically different received films.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of that the writer's medium versus the director's medium is that you can be you can make a bad movie out of a good script, but not the other way around.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
You can't make a good script out of a bad movie. Right.
Yeah, okay. you can't make a good movie out of a bad script.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Because the script can go through so much as it.
Yeah.
But if it's just rotten to the core, then yeah. So a few main things that I want to talk about. One is obviously the technical achievement of these films. It gets better as it goes on, but this was kind of a landmark thing, and it was one of the first films to use on location motion capture. Yeah, and so like the whole thing on the Golden Gate Bridge, it's like rather than, because you look at something like Lord of the Rings, which was the first film to kind of use that technology where they're interacting with other actors. So like just pasting over someone, but to do that on location where you're not in control of everything. So those little dots they cover on everyone's face, if you lose those, you can't do the performance. You can't make the film. So there was kind of new technologies developed and whatnot to make sure that those are being seen and they can do the playback on set where they make sure that everything works together.
Nice. Well, yeah, because it's we haven't mentioned this yet either, but Andy Serkis, of course, plays Caesar, and he also obviously played Gollum in Lord of the Rings and sort of spearheaded and pioneered motion capture performances. And watching this series, all I could think of was Andy Serkis. I was like, I wonder how Andy Serkis feels that like he's got two very different but very iconic performances both done through a medium, which means you can't really tell it's him.
Well, yeah, and this is the whole thing with Andy Serkis as well, is that, and we've spoken about this on other podcasts, but the whole argument about like, should Andy Serkis have been nominated? Because the Fox ran an Oscar campaign for Andy Serkis for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and ultimately didn't result in a nomination. No performance has been nominated for an Oscar, or any kind of like vocal only performance, but. So Andy Serkis kind of he describes the performance capture thing as just like digital makeup. That's like, this is my performance, I'm doing everything, and they just paint over me. And I think that like it's kind of doing a discredit to the work that like Weta Studios in New Zealand did these films, that the effects that they do like really adds to the verisimilitude of the apes. Like you know the reason you believe the performer.
Verisimilitude.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It's like the appearance of being true or real.
The amount of times I've used a $5 word on this podcast and you've stopped the show and said, wow, your word of the day calendar, which I don't have, by the way, is really getting its money's worth. Why did you say that word?
Why did you say that word? It's a good word.
Wait, what does it mean again?
Verisimilitude. It's the appearance of being true or real. So
Jesus Christ! All right.
The work of Weta Workshop in combination with Andy Serkis' performance created the verisimilitude of the apes.
Okay. Continue.
Like what do you, because we've had this argument before on pod, but yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that's like, don't get me wrong, Andy Serkis does incredible work in these films, and so does like Toby Kebbell, who plays Cobra. I think in the second one, or second and third one, but I don't think it's him in this one.
Right,
but it's like they and Steve Zahn on the third one as well. They do all this incredible work, but it's like the reason we buy into these characters so much is the combination of the two. I think honestly, Andy Serkis, he should have been nominated for an Oscar for Gollum. I think that's an incredible performance, but I think that he probably deserves one of those like special achievement Oscars that we talked about last week, where it's like, for all the incredible performances you've done. It's one of those things that's like, it's a token gesture, but he deserves it, and it would be a nice way for the Academy to be like, hey, you kind of don't fit into our very neat little boxes we've already created, but what you've done is undeniable.
Yeah. But at the same time as well, it's like what Lord of the Rings did for mocap is now one of the biggest industries in entertainment, like video games. Like AAA video games almost exclusively use mocap now, and it's like, does Andy Serkis need a special Oscar, or should his work have created a new category by now? Best mocap performance,
but there's not enough every year to do that, though.
Yeah, maybe not.
I mean, like, if there was an award for like best
Verisimilitude.
Well, all the acting awards are for verisimilitude.
Okay.
When you think about it.
Of course.
But when I don't know how you would word it, but like essentially an award for best performance that's not like just you on screen. So that would include mocap, voiceover, whatever. And you could just do best mocap or voiceover performance.
Right. Yeah.
Or like even best animation, best animated performance. But I think, because, and that could be Gollum one year, it could be Jeremy Irons as Scar the next year, it could be, obviously the way time works, they wouldn't be following years.
I didn't realize we were time traveling, and my brain was like, Jeremy Irons as when did The Lion King?
And then and then it could also go to the likes of Scarlett Johansson and her. So there's different kind of versions of this performance, of this style of performance.
Best non-screen performance instead of on-screen performance.
So the scene we've kind of teased a couple of times that we want to talk about, I want to talk about, is when the inciting incident of the ape uprising, where Draco Malfoy playing himself,
doing a pretty bad American accent too.
It's not bad so much as I don't know if he's trying to do one. So Tom Felton's in this film, and this was one of his first it would have been post Harry Potter, actually, would it?
This is where this film suffers, is its placement in film history, where coming off the back of 127 hours, you bizarrely cast James Franco as your lead, and coming off the back of the Harry Potter movies, you go, well, we need an actor who you recognize and you'll immediately hate. Tom Felton's probably got a career ahead of him. Let's get in early. And then he did this, and then did Cons. That's all he's done.
Well, and he's going to get him to the Greek. It's not even the first Tom Felton franchise we've done this year.
Okay, get him to the Greek. It's really
the cameo replays himself and makes one. All right, let's. I'm going to Google 33-year-old actors. That's the age Tom Felton is, and using
10 years younger than James Franco.
So let's see. We could add Zac Efron.
No, he's too expensive.
Right.
It can't be a leading man. What about what's his fucking name? The Beast from the X-Men prequels and
yes.
Nicholas Hoult. Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah.
Nicholas Hoult. He would have been good in this role, and he can do a better American accent. Although, was he too big at the time? I like how much time we're spending on this conversation. And we've gone through 2 other conversations in background to cast. Let's do it for each film.
And when you search 33-year-old actors, the top 2 results are Zac Efron and Tom Felton. So I'm going to just check 34, just in case.
No, absolutely not. No.
Michael B. Jordan.
No, again, he's too important. He's too lead.
Oh, actually, another one that now I'm reminded of that was looked at for the role, Shia LaBeouf.
For James Franco's character?
I think for Tom Felton's character.
Tom Felton's character has 4 lines. You're not.
Shia LaBeouf would be good though.
Yeah, he would, but you're not cracking out Shia LaBeouf money for for that role.
Drake and or Josh.
Yes.
It's played by both of them.
Yeah. It's like how Key and Peele are in Fargo.
Yeah.
The's no point to it other than it's Key and Peele.
Yeah. So anyway, that okay, I've completely forgot what I was talking about. The scene. Yeah, where there's the bit of fan service we mentioned. So he's been kind of taunting them and teasing them, singing off key the whole time, and and eventually it becomes, and so Caesar lures him out into the middle of this sanctuary, and they have a little face off. Tom Felton's got this little lecture. His name's Dodge. Dodge has this electric baton that he keeps hitting Caesar with, and Caesar grabs his arm and he goes, "Get your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!" And obviously the line from the original film, that famous line, and then Caesar stands up and goes, no, and it's like this incredible moment.
It is. It's an incredible moment of filmmaking. Like,
It is.
It stands out in the whole series because of like, and we talked about this last week, that something, if the Planet of the Apes as a whole suffers from one overarching problem, it's humans' ability to take apes seriously.
Yeah.
And this is a scene that almost gets up on top of that to me.
Yeah, fuck
like
yeah.
if he grabbed it and he's like, get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape, and he'd gone, no, I would have been like, it's a monkey. It's a talking monkey. But he does it in a way that cuts through cuts through the scene, and it says, take me seriously. It demands you take it seriously. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it's incredible. And this is like, when I saw this film, I was like, I regret this so much, not seeing this in the cinema. Imagine this moment in the cinema, and it gives me chills now. But like seeing, like, you have, oh, get your stinking paw. It's the line from the first one. I'm doing it. And you go, oh, okay, they had to. And it's like, oh, fuck. Like, this, and that's why I said that, like, this might be one of my favorite uses of fan service of all time. Is because
it's a smack on the bum of fan service.
Yeah,
it's got the fan service line, and then the following line is, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, like, stop laughing. Stop thinking you're better than me.
Yeah.
This is important.
Because it's also fan service in the sense that we're, like we mentioned last week, we're now seeing the scene that Cornelius described in Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
And again, Caesar is a character in the second two of the last series, or the last two of the last series. It's maybe worth reminding, like, just how much the Reboot Trilogy takes from sequels that I thought nobody cared about or had seen,
But like, that is, it's an incredible scene, and just like to have felt the pin drop in the cinema, because it's one of the cheesiest fucking uses of, like, his delivery isn't that great, like that natural, because that's the thing about, because I knew this line from this film. I'd heard it, obviously, and it's in The Simpsons as well. And then so I was only familiar with Tom Felton's delivery of it. Then watching the original film last week, it was this interesting thing of like, fuck, that's actually a really powerful line and delivery by Charlton Heston. And so then, to see that, like, bastardized by Tom Felton, and then this complete, like, fuck you to it. It's incredible. And then at the end of the film, Caesar speaks again when James Franco is saying, like, no, come on, Caesar, you have to come home. And he pulls him right close and whispers in his ear, Caesar is home. And it gives me chills. Chills.
Number 15. Sorry, that's a reference to something that not a lot of people are going to get. Continue. Move on.
I'm one of them. But interestingly, as well, so the original ending for this film had Will actually die on screen. And this was filmed, and it was, with test audiences saw this kind of thing. So it was him, had him saying, I am home, and then Will lets him go. And then the soldiers come to stop the rise of the Planet of the Apes and try to shoot Caesar, and James Franco jumps in front of the bullets and takes the shot. And then they realize, like, we don't want it to end like that. So a month before the movie came out, they flew out James Franco and Andy Serkis to reshoot the ending that's in the film.
That's really interesting, especially because of how good the mocap still looks with only a month of work on it. But the interesting one thing I really like about this series, that it displays a restraint that not a lot of series have, and I wish more franchises did this, is that in each film there is like a brand new set of human characters, and it's not always a case of they die, but they're never in the next one. And I like that.
Well, there are significant time jumps and cullings of the human race in between.
But I like that Will isn't in the sequels, and I like that. I really like Jason Clarke's character in Dawn, but I'm glad I don't see him again. Like, it works, and it's ultimately Caesar's story. And I do you,
because you think about that, like, you think of, like, say MCU, for example, is that, like, each film has a new villain, and it's like, half of them just end up in jail by the end of it, but it's like, whatever. It's the same kind of thing, because if you think of like Caesar, they're not even all necessarily antagonists, but they're all like this new set of characters for his current adventure. But it's kind of you question it a bit more, I guess, or you're more inclined to question it when you kind of still see the humans as the heroes a little bit, until obviously war is when it's like definitively like there's no. It's not a matter of like grey. It's good and bad.
Yeah. Who do you blame for the simian flu? Is it James Franco's fault? Did he create it?
Well, like, are you asking me, or are you like misremembering the movie?
I a bit of both.
Because the way the simian flu starts is that they're putting it's ALZ 113. Or ALZ, as we would say in New Zealand.
Isn't that the Pixar number?
It's A113, but you're very close. They got an LZ in there. So this is the Alzheimer's treatment. So this is the one they're giving to Cobra, and they're doing it via aerosol, and they'll have masks on, and then things end up going wrong. One of the guys' masks get knocked off, and the aerosol goes into the air, and it makes him incredibly sick. And then he goes and sneezes on the neighbor, who's been this like fucking asshole throughout the whole movie, and keeps getting his just desserts every scene he's in.
The funniest reoccurring character to be in a movie which didn't need a funny reoccurring character.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a pilot, and so the film ends with him now being sick and off to go do pilot things. So I wouldn't say it's like, I mean, it's kind of Cobra's fault, it's kind of just that guy who let his mask fall off's fault. Yeah.
Wow.
Do you ready for some dumb IMDb trivia?
Absolutely.
So this isn't like, I'll let you see why this is dumb. Okay. So Charles Rodman, John Lithgow's character, regains his ability to play the piano after ALZ 112 treatment. This is a reference to The Simpsons, A Fish Called Selma, where Troy McClure stars in a musical adaptation of Planet of the Apes. In the song Dr. Zayas, McClure, playing George Taylor, asks, "Can I play the piano anymore?" Dr. Zayas answers, "Of course you can," to which Taylor replies, "Well, I couldn't before."
Wow, that's so funny. I wonder, what do you think?
I don't think it is a reference to that.
it's still a funny idiosyncrasy to have across. I didn't even make that connection. That's so funny. that's very funny.
Because we do see him be able to play the piano before, like struggling to play the piano beforehand.
Struggling, so he couldn't before. Let's deconstruct this. There is literally a scene in a Planet of the Apes movie that came out after that Simpsons episode in which a character couldn't play the piano and then can after a ape enters his life. Wow. That's inspiring.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm ever at the helm of like a reboot of a famous IP, I'm going to look for a parody of that and then insert a grounded, realistic version of something that's in the parody into
it. Yeah. Also, in the kind of like subtle world building in this film, you see a couple of like news headlines. One mentions the first manned voyage to Mars, and another one is just the the headline "Lost in Space." So there's your little tease for Planet of the Apes.
I thought about that, and that also definitively makes this a reboot, because in the original, that voyage takes place in the 60s, whereas this is set in 2011. If it is,
well, but the voyage takes place in present day in both, kind of thing.
Yeah, I know, but it's still changing the timeline. I did wonder, because they show pictures of the astronauts, and I was like, you'd think if they were going to eventually remake Planet of the Apes in this timeline, you want like a star to play George Taylor, and you don't see anyone famous in that footage.
You just wait.
Oh, okay. Do you actually have something here?
No, I just implying that one of them's going to become massively famous.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, actually, AJ, one of them is fucking
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. It's Tom Hanks. He's going to be the main character. Tom Hanks would be good in one of these movies, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Hanks should have played the James Franco character.
Mm.
Actual, though. Like, of course, there's an age difference, and John Lithgow probably shouldn't be Tom Hanks' dad. but like, he's old and wise.
But
and
he's
loving,
old.
and I don't know. I could see it.
Who's older out of Tom Hanks and John Lithgow?
John Lithgow, surely. He's got grey hair.
Oh yeah, he's 11 years older than Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
How old do you think John Lithgow is?
On
a scale of 1 to 100.
It's like guessing a Rotten Tomato score.
Would you say
late 60s.
So,
late 60s.
So if he's 11 years older than Tom Hanks, you think, what would you place Tom Hanks at?
Nah, Tom Hanks is in his 60s, isn't he? All right, John Lithgow is early 70s.
He's 75.
Yeah, mid-70s.
Yeah, exactly mid-70s.
Wow.
So next up, 3 years later, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was made by Matt Reeves, and so James Franco didn't return for this film because Rupert Wyatt didn't return. It was one of those leaving in solidarity kind of thing. Good for him.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot imagine James Franco's character making this film better. To be honest, it doesn't need the character.
Mm. What is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes about?
Okay, so it's set 10 years later, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 10 years later, and the simian flu basically coronavirus to the whole world, but this time much worse. So we're now in a post-apocalypse, basically, where cities of humans are hanging on by shreds. And
the survival rate, about 1 in 500 people were genetically immune from the simian flu, so that's roughly how much of the population is left. So there's 7 billion people in the world. 1, 2, 3, divided by 500. Not that many people left.
Thank you for that. Like, literally the only reason anyone's hanging out for that is to hear the number at the end. And you're like, not many people at all.
About 14 million.
Wow, that's heaps. So the apes now live in this little tribe that is in the woods off San Francisco. Caesar is the leader, and he has a son, and he has a wife, and the wife has a new baby. And they sort of live in relative harmony with each other. They communicate via sign language and a small amount of talking. Caesar's basically the only one that talks, but they live sort of in constant vigilance of the humans. You know, that they're never not aware that the humans are still out there, and they make contact with a group of humans from a survival outpost in San Francisco who are trying to turn on a dam in the woods that'll give them power back. There's a confrontation.
They're kind of like, hey, can you let us repair the dam? I know it's in your territory, but if you let us repair it, we don't have to ever return here.
Yes, but then on that same token, it's also giving the humans more power, which is something they don't want to give them.
Yeah.
So what eventually happens really is Caesar bonds with some of the humans and sort of learns to trust them, while Cobra, who is the sort of would you call him, not the right-hand man, that's more Maurice the Orangutan. He's what role does he? He's his Judas, essentially. He's his follower. He's his follower who does not trust the humans. It ultimately results in Cobra seemingly killing, assassinating Caesar and blaming it on the humans, and then leading an all-out attack on the humans, beginning a war. Turns out Caesar didn't die, but he fights Cobra and eventually defeats him, killing him. But at what cost? It's too late. The war has begun.
So this is the whole Battle of the Planet of the Apes last film in the original series. One of the kind of main themes of that, or recurring motifs in that, was this whole ape shall not kill ape thing. And that's like a huge thing in this. And that's Cobra betrays that when he attempts to kill Caesar. And then you've got another, for me, on par with the no, and the Caesar is home, is that Cobra is like Mufasaing off the cliff, and Caesar's up there scarring him, and he so Cobra's dangling off like it's a giant tower that's been blown up, and Cobra, does the cowardly thing in his final moments of pleading Caesar for his life, and reminds him, like, ape shall not kill ape. And then Caesar's holding him, and letting him go would let him fall to his death. And Caesar says, "You are not ape," and lets him then drop. And that was one of those things that Andy Serkis read the script and was like, I can't kill Cobra. That's such a betrayal. And I think that line was added later on to like really emphasize that point.
Right.
That it's like he's lost his ape humanity, and doesn't deserve to.
If only there was a word for that. I'm not even making fun of you. There's not a word for it.
Yeah.
His ape-anity? No, his apathy? It would be?
Simeon? It would be, yeah. Yes, so...
It's verisimilitude.
Yeah.
It sounds like a colour. It sounds like a
cerulean.
Deep red. Or vermilion is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. What color is vermilion?
A deep red or a deep orangey red. Everyone look up vermilion. I'm not cutting out the silence.
It's both a brilliant red or scarlet pigment, originally made from the powdered mineral cinnabar and the corresponding color. It's also a city in South Dakota.
Colors come from something? Well, it just existed. That's a confusing sentence to me. That it comes from something.
So what were we talking about? Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?
No, we're talking about colours, Richard.
So who else do you think is the same age as Jason Clarke and could have played his role?
Right, so here we have the opposite issue.
The casting's too good, it's distracting.
Well, Jason Clarke's great in the role, but like the only really famous person in this movie is Gary Oldman, who plays like a B villain.
Dreyfus is his name.
Right, and so it does feel like while they have an A-lister, they're not playing the role that they should have been playing. So I don't know if I necessarily need it to be... Do you know what it more is? It's more that every human character should be the same level of famous as Jason Clarke, which is like C or D.
Oh, because we've got Felicity as well. What's her name?
Yeah. Kerry
Russell.
Russell, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I was thinking about, like, we did the episode of like Marvel or DC actors who haven't been cast yet, and we went through actors who had commented on whether or not they would do a superhero movie and tried to nail down if they're a Marvel actor or a DC actor or like a Fox X-Men actor or a Sony Marvel actor. I was trying to, while watching the films, I was like, what is a Planet of the Apes reboot actor? Because it's so all over the place, yeah. Although to me, like, because James Franco in the first one, I was like, this is such a weird casting, and then Gary Oldman, I was kind of like, he's too famous for this, and then Woody Harrelson in the third one, I was like, this is perfect casting.
Woody Harrelson plays a much different role to the other.
Yeah, true.
Where you need someone opposite Andy Serkis, whereas the other two aren't, matching the power of Andy Serkis.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know. I think I wouldn't replace Jason Clarke. Ironically, he's the one actor I wouldn't replace.
Okay, well then, who's the same age as Gary Oldman? Gary.
What, like a less famous version of Gary Oldman? Is that what we're doing? I guess,
yeah. So 63-year-old actors, 20
Tom
years
Hanks.
older.
No.
Yeah, someone less famous than. All right, who could we have had? Dan Castellaneta?
Yes.
Ray Romano?
I like Ray Romano. I'd like to see him in more roles. I don't know if this
Dolph
is the
Lundgren?
one to put him in.
Giancarlo Esposito?
Yeah, that's a good casting for that character. Anyway, what do we want to talk about this movie?
No, I just want to look up more actor ages. Okay.
What about like Gary Sinise? Why is Gary Sinise not playing?
Yeah, especially because he's one that I always get confused with Steve Zahn, who's in the next one. And there's
Right.
another actor who also he played the dad from Death Note. I always think he's Steve Zahn whenever I see him.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
So we talked about Will Rodman, James Franco's character, his fate. It's implied that he died from the simian flu. He does have a little cameo in this film, and that because Caesar returns after he's presumed dead. He returns to the house where he grew up, which Will Rodman's house, and he finds a little camcorder and watches footage of him playing with a young Caesar, which I thought was one of those things that's like, oh, let's quietly bring in James Franco for a little cameo. He had no idea this was in the film. He was asked about an interview and he was like, what, I have a cameo? I didn't know that. I didn't think they even asked my permission to do that.
I like to think Caesar started the video and was like, is that James Franco? Or they find the Jason Clarke finds the photo in the house and he's like, Caesar, did you live with James Franco? Did you live with disgraced actor James Franco?
Why this time it was, did you live with celebrated actor James Franco?
Well, but this is set 10 years after 2011, so it's actually set next year. No, this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. But also, so when Caesar goes back to the house, there's a sign with a red X on the door, which would mean that someone living here is infected, kind of thing. So that's kind of the biggest implication we get, that he had the right, like, also being in and around the facilities, he was probably, that's one of the early exposures. Yep. A randomly placed useless statistic. This is our second franchise to contain a 2014 film which features a furry sidekick named Rocket after Guardians of the Galaxy.
Very nice. There's a statistic somewhere in Jason Clarke being in this film and Terminator Genesis, which came out in 2015, but something about them both being unclear reboots of a famous franchise, like something, useless statistic.
Very good.
I'm clearly trying very hard these days.
Yeah. So we didn't actually really talk about this yet, but what did you think of this film?
Yeah, I was about to ask what is the Rotten Tomatoes score?
What would you guess it is?
95, 96.
90.
90. I think this is an unbelievably good film. And I almost mean that as an insult. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, sure.
I've been given this and I've looked at the director and I've gone, it's a Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah.
Why is this?
It shouldn't be this good.
One?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be this good. I think it's the best in the whole franchise, including the
original.
The original. I think it's better than the original.
Sure,
I get shades of The Dark Knight watching this film. I get shades of Blade Runner 2049 or Mad Max. Like, I get it feels like one of those tentpole blockbusters that came out and everyone was talking about, but it wasn't. It feels like it deserved that, but didn't get it. So as I said earlier, I went to see this at the pictures, at the cinemas, because my friend worked at the cinema and could get me in for 50 cents. I probably went to like a midnight screening for it or something.
Yeah, sure.
And I remember hearing beforehand, it's really good. Yeah. Like, it's weird. It's weird how good this is. And I just thought it was incredible. And I was so excited to get back and watch it again for this. And yeah, man, I think it's Grecian, it's complex, it's tragic, it's beautiful, it's profound. It's everything I was not expecting it would be, I guess. I think this is a 5-star movie, a great film.
So do I. So the first time I watched this film is kind of funny. So
I'm looking forward to it.
I had just moved to Auckland. I completely forgot about this until just recently. So I just moved to Auckland, and I haven't told the story on the podcast, so I'm going to tell an even longer story. I'm leaning back in my chair.
Oh my god! What's going on?
So I'd gotten my internship as part of my study. You have to get an internship at a company. Mine was in Auckland. I had to move cities. And then I moved up. I was flatting with my girlfriend at the time, David Corrales, who we've had on the podcast a couple of times, and Aaron Richardson, our Oscars co-host. So I think I had 2 weeks or something before I was starting my internship. One of the first nights that all 4 of us were at the flat, we had a few drinks and we ended up playing a game called which we dubbed Broomy Spinny. So it's where you put your head down, you bend over, put your head down on the top of a broom, and you spin around. It gets you incredibly dizzy. Do that 10 times, and then you had to run downstairs, flush the toilet, and run back upstairs.
Sounds like a recipe for a rolled ankle, if you ask me.
So during one of my turns, I broke my foot.
This is like the time I watch some people play soccer, football, but they set the ball on fire and someone ended up in the hospital. And it's like, wow, guess what happened, everyone?
Yeah.
It's a guess what happened injury.
But it was one of those things where it was incredibly painful. One of the most painful. So I sprained my ankle and broke my 5th metatarsal, which is an incredibly difficult. They were like, wow, this is an incredible difficult bone to break, and an even more difficult bone to, treat the breaking of. And yes, I ended up in a cast. I was actually in the cast. Well, not a cast, but like a soft cast kind of thing. So I was in that for like a week.
Right.
And I was starting my internship in a week. And I had this cast on. I was walking with crutches, wasn't allowed to put any weight on it kind of thing. And so I just moved to Auckland, which is significantly hotter than Christchurch as well. And it was summer. And so my days were spent lying in bed, unable to go anywhere, to go to the kitchen, to really go. I couldn't shower either. I needed help to put like a chair in the shower so I could like properly wash myself. And so my days were spent just lying on my bed, drenched in sweat, watching movies. So I caught up on some ones from 2014 that I hadn't seen yet. Grand Budapest Hotel was one of them. Edge of Tomorrow was one of them. And Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was one of them. And at this time as well, Dave also he was working a job where he had most of the days free. And he would come in, I think he was just getting lonely. And he would come in and he would lie on the bed and just so like lie in front of me and then just put his hand out so that he was touching my leg. Not my broken one, but just so that he was making physical contact with me. And so I was usually like in my underwear or in like, a loose fitting t-shirt and some underwear. And he would come and just like rest his hand on my thigh and lie on the bed. And he would walk in, an hour or more into these films, and they did it with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, that he walked in like half an hour at the end and was like by the end of it he was like gasping and shocked and like he has this uncanny ability to just like buy into a movie immediately no matter where he picks it up. Yeah. But so that was my first experience watching Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, like on a glary screen that I couldn't do anything about, drenched in sweat, with David Corrios resting his hand on my thigh.
Like a sad dog.
Yeah. And if you're wondering what happened with my foot, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and not like a panic attack, but I had this moment of like, I got really like claustrophobic and I essentially like ripped my cast off because I just couldn't. I was just panicking, having something like being constrained like that. And then I went to the doctors the next morning, and essentially said like, "Hey, yeah, sorry about this." And I managed to it's going to sound like but I actually kind of managed to like sweet talk / like flirt my way into getting a moon boot when I was supposed to have a cast for a lot longer. Like it was one of those things where it's like, I actually like if I had acted differently, I wouldn't be walking out of here with a moon boot. And so because I had a moon boot, I was able to start my new job, just partially restricted. And
it all healed all right? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because
fifth verisimilitude.
I think it's metatarsal, because it's one of those things that's like centripetal and centrifugal force, where one is your foot and one is your hand. Yeah, metatarsal. Yeah, is the foot. But I'm glad you asked about did it heal all right, because, and so this was like a whole other thing. So I called it ACC, which is you probably don't have it in the States, but it's like,
accident insurance.
Yeah, accident insurance, but like for the whole country. So you just get put on. Yeah. Anyway,
it's one of New Zealand's wacky free healthcare schemes.
Yeah, and so they do this where it's like, because I was unable to drive, and they said that you can get like free taxis, kind of thing through ACC, but not if there's like a bus, available to you. And so I finished work at 6:00 on the dot each day, and the last bus was maybe a 5-minute walk away that left at 6:02. And obviously that 5-minute walk became a 7 to 10 minute walk in my condition. And this is on Ponsonby Road, by the way. And they wouldn't give me the taxi allowance because it's technically possible for me to catch that bus because it leaves after my shift is finished. And I was like, no, like you don't, and they said, oh, just like ask your boss to leave early. And it's like, you don't understand. Like I'm starting a new job. It's in the film and television industry. If I'm lucky, I finish at 6. Like, like most days that's 7 or 8 kind of thing. And they just weren't buying it. And so one day I ended up, I walked home on a moon boot. And so I walked, maybe it took me like hour and a half. And anyway, the moral of the story is I still can't feel part of my foot.
Right.
Because I somehow had or gave myself nerve damage. And when I was talking, because I was with someone, my sister had rolled her ankle or something like that, and I went in, and I was like, hey, while I'm here, broke my foot a year ago, still can't feel part of it. Is that normal? And they were like, yeah, you probably have nerve damage, and while bones or other parts of your body heal in a matter of days, weeks, or even months, nerve damage, you're talking maybe years, maybe decades kind of thing. And so yeah, there's this little, like just above my heel, but on the sole of my foot there, or just like in front of my heel, I guess, there's a little patch where it feels like I've like stood on a sticker. And so if I rub my foot across carpet, there's one part that can't feel it. So
you liked Dawn of the Planet of the Apes then?
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well,
I hope people like that tangent. I hope that
of all the episodes to do a tangent on as well. Where was the story for our MVP episode?
Well, we didn't need it because we had all those great traffic stories.
That's true. Of this qualifies as a traffic story, Ponsonby Road.
Yeah, that's why I dropped in the name of it. I was working on Fitzroy Street at the time, and I was walking to Tyburnia Ave. Mm-hmm. Not to dox myself, but where I lived, fucking 6 years ago. Fun fact about this film, which is a much, much more interesting tidbit about my life than that story. A friend of mine worked on this film, works at Weta, and did special effects for this film.
Who's your friend?
Well, I don't want to say his name. I don't want to dox him.
Bleep it out if you want.
Was his name? Who actually, who's done special effects on films of mine?
His name's in the credits, Richard. I don't know if it's doxing him.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, anyway, so it's interesting, like talking to him about how it works, because so when you picture motion capture, I imagine what you think of is someone designs an ape face, and Andy Serkis wears these dots all over his face, and the dots on his face correspond to dots programmed into the ape face. You run a program and it moves. That's not what happens.
Okay.
What happens is that they get like a close-up of Andy Serkis's face from, whether they wear the little camera that points down at the face. Yeah. And what they have to do at Weta is go through frame by frame and recreate every single movement that he does by hand. So they're not just running a program to do it. They go through and be like, okay, so cool, he's in this frame, he's furrowed his brow slightly more, so we put and you're working with like the muscles in the face.
So it's almost like a paint by numbers situation.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And the notes they get back are like, this ape in the background has to blink 3 frames earlier.
Jesus, Richard, this is easily the most interesting piece of information we've delivered on this podcast in years, dude. We're not the type of podcast that does genuinely interesting, like behind the scenes facts like this.
Yeah, I didn't think of it until today, but I was going to reach out to him and see if he wanted to join us for a segment on the podcast, or maybe even an interview with
Let's
with
interview him.
VFX.
Yeah.
I'll reach out
Cool.
to him.
I've got a favorite scene in this movie, and it's actually the combination of two scenes doing the same thing. So about just maybe after the first act of the film, Cobra leads a troop of rebellious apes into the city to try and like see if the humans can be trusted, and he's sort of doing this without Caesar's permission, and he sees a bunch of humans like practicing with guns, and he's wandering around their like warehouse, and two of the humans spot him and they aim their gun at him, and it's this very tense scene, and Cobra looks very scary, and they're like, he's an ugly motherfucker, look at him, and you think it's going to end in Cobra getting shot or like, you know, all hell breaking loose, and instead Cobra like arches his back and then goes and then starts acting like how we would see a chimpanzee act, like, you know, that sort of thing, being very silly, very, very, you know, monkey-esque, and the humans let their guard down. And then when maybe 40 minutes later in the film, when Cobra's decided he's going to take matters into his own hands, he returns to these humans and acts silly again enough for them to let their guard down, where he grabs one of their machine guns and kills them both. And I think, Richard, this is a fantastic scene. And it's fantastic because it is using the fact that it's a Planet of the Apes movie to uniquely get out of trouble. We talked about this on the Death Note episode, and we compared it to Breaking Bad, like Walt in the RV when Hank's outside, and how like so much of Breaking Bad and so much of Death Note is for the writers, it's problem solving. It's getting a character into a problem and then organically solving the problem so that it doesn't feel like they're cheating. This is a textbook example of that, and what elevates it even more is that it only works because A, Cobra is a chimpanzee, and B, it's a bonobo, and B, it's set in this specific fictional universe at this specific time in the fictional universe. You wouldn't be able to do this in a, you know, the same like problem in a movie where all the characters are humans, or it's not set in the
or even in like the original one.
Correct. And I think it's brilliant because when I was rewatching it for this podcast, all I remembered was he gets out of it. I couldn't remember how, but I remember thinking like, it's something real good, and it, you know, it delivered, and it's so good, and it's an enjoyable scene because it's kind of silly as well. It's such a brilliant moment of screenwriting, and this film gets away with similar things in similar areas where in other films the same plot points could happen, and you'd be like, oh my God, how infuriating. For example, we've talked a few times on this podcast, and I think maybe one of the most notorious tropes in all of film history that people hate is when like a misunderstanding could be easily resolved, but for the sake of the plot it isn't resolved. A wife walks in on her husband as like a seductress is about to kiss him against his will, and he's like, no, I can explain, and they break up for 6 months before getting back together, all because he couldn't be like, you actually saw something and incorrectly assumed what was going on. You actually
saw me being sexually assaulted.
Yeah. Or like Shakespeare's Othello does this. It's like, just fucking talk to each other and you'll solve the central issue of the story. And what's great about Planet of the Apes is that it does that too, where Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, where it's a situation of like the entire war that the third film is named for is about a miscommunication. It's about humans thinking apes started the war and apes wrongly believing humans started the war. But because they're apes and because they're humans, it is unique and it works and it's perfect. And you have a great villain in Cobra as well. Like it is predicated on a misunderstanding that could be easily resolved with communication, but we're talking about differently developed animals here. And so the tragedy is ultimately that that they're not able to communicate, because if they could, you would have situations like Jason Clarke and Caesar, who have a very beautiful scene at the end where they sort of hug each other and be like, you need to leave because
we're not so different, you and
we're
I.
not so different, you and I. I want to talk about Cobra as well, because I think Cobra is one of the greatest villains of the 21st of the 2010s, say whatever. You know, he's a great villain, and I think
of this franchise.
I think he ought to be recognized more. And I think he represents what's so great about these three films is how damn sympathetic everyone is, or empathetic everyone is.
Yeah.
More so than your usual superhero fare. Like, the thing about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is, like, Cobra is the ugly monkey, you know, he's coded as the villain, but it's like, I mean, he's kind of right. He has a point.
It's that classic thing. It's the two sides of the same coin. Like the villain just being a different version of the hero, because not only are they both apes, but like as well that they were the two that were experimented on.
Yeah.
And it went well for Caesar and not so much for Cobra.
Yeah, and you watch him sneak into San Francisco and you watch him kill these guards, and like initially you're like, oh, he's ruining it, but it's like, he's right though. Like, so is Caesar, but like they both act completely organically to who their characters are. It's excellent stuff, and the brotherhood and the duality between the two is world class, I think. It's a shame that it feels like almost a hot take to say this movie is as good as it is, because it's like it just feels underrated. Would you call these underrated?
They're one of those weird ones where it's like
everyone who's seen them likes them. It's just not a lot of people have seen them.
Yeah. Got a couple of pieces of IMDb trivia here.
Lay them on me.
So the shot where Caesar stands over Cobra at the edge of the chasm is a mirror image of the shot in Rise of the Planet of the Apes where Cobra is standing over Steve Jacobs. That's David Oyelowo's character, who was one of the evil version of James Franco who wanted to keep experimenting on them and whatnot. In both films, the antagonist on the edge is pushed and falls to his death. Both of these scenes happen after a climactic fight. So Cobra is in effect hoisted by his own petard.
Someone learned what that means and is trying to construct a sentence around it.
Yeah, just to try and add to the like verisimilitude of the
exactly.
This one I just thought was funny. Cobra shares some similarities with Scar from The Lion King.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both were uncles to their honorary nephews, Blue Eyes and Simba. Both have a hatred to the leader of their clans, Caesar Mufasa. Both eventually try to kill their clan leader. However, Scar actually succeeded in killing Mufasa. Both take major control of their clans, also starting a war. Both are complete monsters. Both fall to their deaths after a climactic battle with their respective rivals, Caesar and Simba. However, Scar survived his fall but got killed by the hyenas. Yeah, they also have big fucking scars on their face.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Like, I thought that's where you were going with that. Like, I thought that was going to be your main point.
I want to say as well, I want to shine a spotlight on Maurice the Orangutan, who's sort of the Samwise Gamgee of this trilogy.
Yeah.
And he has a great moment in this where after Cobra supposedly shoots Caesar and then starts burning down the ape village and making it look like it's the humans, Maurice looks at the humans who have just made friends with everyone and goes, "Run!" And it's his only line in the first two films, like that he speaks out loud, and it's like it's a comedic beat where you're not expecting a comedic beat, and it's it's really good.
He's a good boy. So that's do you have anything else you want to say about Dawn?
So much, but nothing comes to mind. I love the opening and closing shots that it's like that slow zoom and slow zoom out of Caesar's face.
Fuck yeah. And taking pictures for Instagram. Boy, is it convenient when a film's most iconic image is its opening one.
Yeah.
Because it's like, bump, snap, and then I can just enjoy the movie rather than having to be like, oh shit, I'll go back to that.
Yeah, watching Mission Impossible, a film I've never properly seen, and having to be like, fuck, when does he hang from the ceiling? When does this happen in this movie? Get your phone out, quickly! For those who don't know, we take photos of our screens for Instagram to prove we're watching the film.
Yeah, it's funny, we just kind of started doing that one day because we made an Instagram for Cult Pop Show.
I think it's a great way to keep the Instagram program alive, and
it's cool.
It breathes life into the process of how we do this, you know.
And it is funny. I mean, I always fucking forget to do it, but
you do. And there was a while where people were guessing which one of us took the photo, because I would typically go for like the iconic or stage shots, and you would go for like blurry crash zooms in on the characters' faces and stuff. One time you just uploaded a video.
Did I?
For I'll always know what you did last summer. It's just a video.
Really? I don't remember.
It's like a video of a funny thing that happens, but it's like, well, I guess a new precedent's been set, and now we can do videos.
I don't remember that at all. I remember, I think it's Romancing the Stone is my worst one, where it's like nothing to do with the film. Yeah. My one for War of the Planet of the Apes is pretty good, though. I'll say. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. I'm not going to spoil what it is.
Oh, very cool.
Although, while we're just getting esoteric, my favourite one I've ever done is National Treasure 2. I think it's the second one. When he sticks his arm on the rock.
Yeah, it's
so funny. So funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, War for the Planet of the Apes, also directed by Matt Reeves, came out in 2017. What's this one about?
So this one is set 5 years later, and it's sort of there's the, you know, Earth is even more ruins, and there's now a war between the apes and the humans, and at the start of the film, the apes and Caesar sort of take hold of a troop of soldiers and send them back home as an act of mercy, to say, like, basically, like, just leave us alone. Like, we're not going to war with you. We're happy in the woods, you know. Unfortunately, in retaliation, Woody Harrelson, who's described in the Star Wars opening crawl of this film as a ruthless colonel. He shows up with like a team, and they lay waste to Caesar's tribe, tragically killing his son and wife, who were main characters, or his son certainly was in the previous film. So it's a very heavy death. I think you kind of see it coming. It feels like as a screenwriter, it feels like the obvious thing to do with this next chapter. So the only family member he has alive is his 5-year-old son, Cornelius, from the original Planet of the Apes movies. So they've heard word that there is like this sanctuary that's, you know, some journey in a different direction. And so Caesar sends the remainder of his tribe to go look for that sanctuary, while he and a couple of the other main ape characters, who are all different kinds of apes, thank God, because how else would you be able to differentiate between the characters? They set off essentially to get revenge on Woody Harrelson. And so along the way, they pick up a mute human girl. And they don't know why she can't speak, but they start to discover other humans that can't speak. They also pick up Steve Zahn, who plays a maybe one of the greatest CGI characters, I think, on record so far in human history. I think that cat. What's his name?
Bad Ape.
Is he just called Bad Ape? That's so funny. He looks incredible. My God, he looks out of this world. He looks 5 times better than the other apes in the film.
And because he's bald as well,
right? Yeah.
Probably why.
And he sort of tells them about where he's seen this camp where Woody Harrelson's character is. So they infiltrate it, but Caesar gets caught, discovers his whole tribe have also been caught, and are hanging out there, and learns from Woody Harrelson's character. They're imprisoned there.
Yeah, it's a concentration camp.
Yeah. Learns from Woody Harrelson's character that the simian flu, which all the remaining humans were immune to, is actually mutated and is now taking away your voice and your intelligence, basically, turning them into the humans we see at the start of the Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes movie.
And the little girl who can't speak's name is
Nova, who is the mute sex symbol from
she's a little girl now, but in just a few short 2,000 years
will
grow up to be that sex object for Charlton Heston.
That's what I mean, is that it's clearly the timeline has been reassessed for for these ones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily that she is supposed to, like, I think it's a fun little fence.
There's no reason she isn't Nova, I think.
Well,
she's
a 2,000 year gap.
Other than that, though, like, she's a mute girl. Like, if they make another one, and I know they are, but if they do, which I know they are, like, she could be the Nova. You know what I mean? That wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, so Woody Harrelson says something to Caesar that I thought was really cool, where he's like, "You're so blinded by an act of war." He's like, "I didn't mean to kill your family, but it's it's war. So what do you expect?" And he says to him, "If you kill me, all the humans will kill your entire tribe. So, like, you actually need to weigh up what you're trying to do here." Anyway, he sort of makes contact again with the rest of the apes that are on the outside, and they construct a Chicken Run-esque breakout. It becomes like a prison break. And sorry, you also find out that Woody Harrelson's group of soldiers are actually like rebels themselves, because when this new virus broke out that started taking away people's voices, Woody Harrelson was the only leader who was like, "We need to kill everyone who's infected."
Yeah, including his own son.
Yep, so there are now other humans who are coming to kill them, right? So they're basically in the middle of this like hot war zone. And it ends with them all escaping. Woody Harrelson contracts the virus through a doll that is transferred to him.
How good is that?
It's great. Yeah.
Nova's doll, like that, because obviously there was the importance of the doll in the original.
Yeah,
and then, to bring that's so good.
Yeah, so Nova has a doll. She breaks into the compound, gives it to Caesar, and then Woody Harrelson is like, "What the hell is this?" And he gets the virus from that. It ends with an avalanche. The apes all escape and eventually go to this sanctuary they've been looking for, which it looked like Lake Michigan or something like that.
The Colorado Plateau.
There you go. And Caesar, suffering from wounds in the war, quietly dies next to Maurice while they look on their ape sanctuary that has been created.
Look upon their works, ye mighty in despair.
But the opposite of that.
Yeah. And joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is both of us our first time watching this film, yeah?
Yeah. Weird that it's like, loved the second one when I saw it in cinemas, never watched the first one, never even considered going to see this one.
Yeah, it's insane. It's such a weird, like, I remember when we did Most Anticipated Films of 2017, we kind of both said, this is the best film of the year that I won't see. Yeah. And it's just like, for some reason, like, by that point, I'd already loved the first two, but so this is the character Bad Ape you mentioned. I loved this film as well. Just FYI, It has 84% of Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay,
so all three movies in the trilogy quite high. But just talking about this character of Bad Ape, it's kind of an interesting thing because the character was kind of created to like answer questions. And that you kind of might not have realized that you were asking, because it was during like the press tour for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Andy Serkis was asked about like, did the ALZ 113 did that affect like all apes or just Caesar's tribe? And then they were like, actually, fuck, that's a good question. So they created the character of Bad Ape to show that. Yeah, this is like a worldwide thing. And then also Matt Reeves had the idea that it's like, well, all the apes wear clothes in the original and none of ours would. So they created a character who's gone bald from old age, essentially. And to kind of bridge that gap.
Right.
And I also, like, I love that the character, like, that Bad Ape is just called Bad Ape because that's like his... He talks about how his like the humans around him just called him you're bad ape, and so he just thought that was his name, kind of thing. And then the Woody Harrelson's character is just like the Colonel, and it's like it's cool having that. It's like society has devolved so much that like our characters are just there's one called Preacher, the Colonel, Bad Ape,
Donkey,
like that. Donkey, fuck, and that's another thing that I loved the addition to these films because they at the start they talk about like, we've got a couple of Kongs coming up, and they're like, let's send out Donkey, and so it's like they're referring to the apes as Kongs, and then donkeys, presumably a reference to Donkey Kong, are like apes that are working for the humans.
Guess what I just learned and didn't make the connection with until right now.
What?
I just thought they were randomly calling them donkey. Like as sort of like an insulting term. Of course it's Donkey Kong.
yeah. And it's and also like the reference that they're like kind of their pack mules, really.
Yeah.
So it's a fun little double thing. That's very funny that you didn't pick up on it. There's also the Alpha Omega, which is the Colonel's organization. That's a reference to the bomb from Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Right. There you go.
Huh?
All right. So I need to talk about my feelings for this film because they're a lot more complex than I feel for the last two.
Okay.
In that, what are the Rotten Tomato scores like for all three?
So it's 82, 90, 84.
Yeah, I agree with that order. I think the second one is quite clearly the best one.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this one more than the first one, but I was maybe slightly overhyped for this film in terms of how I ended up feeling about it. I liked it a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, but I think when I was told like the third one's as good as the second one, I was maybe expecting that, and I don't think it is. I think
for me, the third one, while I liked it an awful lot, it didn't have a no or a you are not ape moment. And I think it's like it needed one jaw-dropping moment.
Yeah. I think Bad Ape, as incredible as he looks, and I love Steve Zahn, I could very much understand someone hating that character. He flirts with being like the Jar Jar Binks of the series, I think. Just because he's...
I think someone said that to me or us, didn't
right.
they?
I don't know. It's
about
just
the fact that the third one has a Jar Jar Binks character in it.
Yeah, well, he is though. Like, it's not as bad as Jar Jar Binks, and I certainly didn't. I certainly didn't dislike him as much, but I could easily see someone being like really enjoying the first two, and then getting to Bad Ape and being like, "Fuck." Like they added a Jar Jar Binks because if I was to criticize him in any like sort of intellectual way, I'd say I feel like Steve Zahn is a little too articulate as the character. I think he could draw it back a bit. He seems
well. You know what game we're about to play then?
What? Oh, who else could have?
Him?
But it's not a case of who else could have played him. It's just that the
well,
performance...
now that you've said that. Okay, 53-year-old actors. So we've had a 43, 53, and a 6-year-old.
Holy shit! And a 33 with Tom Felton. Like, literally every actor we've looked up has been 10 years apart from each other.
So that makes this bit work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actors who are less articulate who could have played Steve Bad Ape.
I'm not saying.
Okay, how about this? The number one result for 53-year-old actors. Who could be less articulate as Bad Ape than Vin Diesel?
Okay, exactly. There you go. He'd have to be like a gorilla, though.
Because he's built like one. You also got Matt LeBlanc.
I don't think he would... In a way, he's less articulate. Steve Zahn is the rich man's Matt LeBlanc. He totally is. He's Joey in smarter movies than Friends.
Right, yeah. Okay, some other options, because this is probably the best pool of actors we've had to choose from. Ty Burrell.
Okay, yeah, I can see him doing it.
Josh Brolin.
No. He should be in these movies, though. I think he'd be a good...
Yeah, Daniel Craig.
No.
Jason Statham.
No.
Will Ferrell.
If these movies were sillier, it could be Will Ferrell.
Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah! That's it! Mark Ruffalo's a great idea. Mark Ruffalo...
because you said, like, no, it's not because of this. I was like, well, now we're going to find a better version. Like, we're going to find one that... And then I saw Mark Ruffalo on the page. I was like, oh, AJ's going to lose his shit. If Adam Driver was 53 years old.
No, I wouldn't say Adam Driver would be good as Bad Ape, though. I don't know. Do you...
Liev Schreiber?
Yeah.
Do you know who else is a 53-year-old and we know can play an ape?
Tell me.
Paul Giamatti.
Do you agree that with my critiques of Bad Ape as a character, or do you at least see where I'm coming from?
I see where you're coming from, yeah. But yeah. I liked him. I thought he was a cool character.
I thought the first half of the film was better. I liked it before it became Chicken Run, and I'm not really I'm just making a joke. I'm not saying it's too much like
it's
a film of two halves.
Well, it's not even Chicken Run. It just becomes like a prison escape movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Chicken Run.
It's a chicken. No, because it's animals. It's animals escaping a prison, and so it's Chicken Run.
Yeah, sure. But it's I think as well that it kind of suffered from the marketing and the title, and
making it seem like it's the biggest thing there is when it's actually probably the smallest story of the three.
Yeah, like that. It's you're setting this up like the Battle for the Five Armies kind of thing, where it's like this one's just going to be fucking apes on horses with machine guns gunning down humans, and it's not at all. And I think it's a better movie because of it, but I can see why. Or you're already kind of going into it with like an underhype.
Yeah,
you're kind of already going into it with the energy that you shouldn't have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I thought that the avalanche at the end was very like, oh, how are you going to use an act of God to? And I think they just got away with it because
also the apes managed to get away from it by they can all climb.
Yeah, so the humans who turn up and decimate the bad guys, which is another thing where it's like, well, this was never really. This is another example of how it's smaller than the war for the Planet of the Apes, in the sense that the main bad guys were no match for the bigger bad guys. They turn up, and then an avalanche happens, and it knocks out the humans, which saves Caesar's life, right? And I was like, that's using coincidence to get a character out of trouble. But then it very swiftly puts them in trouble because now they've got to outrun an avalanche. So it gets away with it. Ultimately, I don't like that Caesar died. I don't think they should have killed off Caesar. I think, first of all, he dies from a wound he gets at the prison, and then they travel from wherever they are to Colorado, and what is presented as like at least a weeks-long journey. They talk about it earlier as in it being a long journey, but that's why they'll be safe from humans. So, like, I find it weird that, like, he would suffer this fatal injury, but survive a trek across the country only to die when he finally gets there. This is the like functionality of it. I'm saying doesn't work. I also would have preferred it if he had survived and been able to live and thrive in his newfound
I mean,
home.
I guess it's one of those things that because they're making a fourth one, it's kind of like I would rather kind of just have it be Caesar's films.
Yeah,
but I think thematically as a trilogy, it kind of makes sense for his character arc to,
of course,
and like to have this like if this was just like a completely removed 3 film. Well, I mean, obviously, it kind of like it only exists as a payoff because we know we're getting the Planet of the Apes. But like, it's such a perfect little like self-contained and one story told over 3 films.
Yeah, I just don't think you need to kill the hero to keep that intact. You know, and it just kind of bums me out, and I think it would have like there's a hope at the center of these movies. Which it wouldn't have to have that there. Like, these could very easily be very cynical movies. And I think Caesar enjoying the spoils of all they'd sacrificed would have further fit that theme or that mood. But yeah, that's about all I didn't like about it. I think it's there are places where I thought it was like the music swelled and it felt very dramatic and I kind of didn't buy it. There's a climactic moment where Caesar is about to throw a grenade at a petrol tank, and he gets shot by the arrow that eventually kills him and stumbles. Watching this, I didn't see the arrow. So picture from my perspective, it's this wide shot of this chimpanzee, this character that has taken 3 movies to take seriously watching a chimpanzee, especially coming off the back of MVP, and George of the Jungle. Now I've got to take this seriously. And I see the music swell in this big dramatic moment and then not see the arrow shoot him and just think it's this weird pratfall where he like fucks up the throw, and I laughed. I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh, he got shot. And like, that's not the movie's fault, but it was, it kind of like took me out for a moment. And there are other moments where I felt it was maybe a little too flourishy for what it was otherwise a very grounded story, and at its best when it's grounded.
Well, yeah, but I also think like it's I apologize if I'm putting words in your mouth, but because it's one of these things where it sounds like you or we are being very critical of the film, but it's like these are notches that take it down from being perfect, not like this is a bad film, here's why. It's like, this is a perfect film, except it has this, this, and this.
What I'm doing is I'm taking issue with everyone who told me that this is on par with the second one. Because I don't think it is at all. I think the second one is like considerably better than the first and third one. Sure. But I really liked the setup as the story gets going. I'm like, yeah, man, this is what you do. You take a character whose entire purpose has been to be above the smut of it all,
above the Planet of the Apes,
and then kill his family and make the stakes emotional. Which, will this be his downfall? He says in the film, he's like, it's true, I'm no better than Cobra. And it's like,
he's haunted by Cobra in the film as well.
Yeah.
That we keep seeing flashes of, which is a cool way to bring Cobra back, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that kind of thing of, the am I better than him?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have anything else you wanted to say about War for the Planet of the Apes?
I feel like I got to talk about it for longer. Talk about what I liked about it more. But I don't like what it is. Here it goes. What it is a very satisfying conclusion to a trilogy, and that's all well and good to say. But then you think, how fucking often are there satisfying conclusions to trilogy? Yeah. This is a landmark franchise. When we get to ranking it, I expect it to rank pretty high because we'll
talk about it when we get there, yes.
This is very significant. This is like, and when it came out, I remember when the, not that I saw it in the cinemas because I'm not a sociopath, but when it came out in cinemas, and I remember thinking like, this one's going to stumble. This will be the stumbling block. And it came out and people, and it got high Rotten Tomatoes score and people were like, yeah, it's great. I was like, no, that's not what trilogies do. It's still not what trilogies do.
Yeah.
Like trilogies stumble and fall, and best case scenario, it's a Godfather Part 3 where it's like a pretty good movie to the two of the greatest films of all time that happen to be sequels. Well, one happens to be a sequel to the other. Like, yeah, and so in that respect, I have intense, very like reverence for this franchise, and I think that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from this. I think if I'm to break, like one of my favorite observations we've ever made on this podcast was when talking about how video game movies always suck, and then Pikachu, the Detective Pikachu movie came out, and it was kind of good, but the problem was you cannot take the lessons learned from Detective Pikachu and apply it to other video game movies because the situation, like it's Pokemon, it's already an IP that transcends video games, and Detective Pikachu is technically a video game, but you don't really think of it as one. All these things that make it like completely useless to cracking the formula of a good video game movie. And on that same token, like, what can you learn from studying this trilogy if you set out to make a good trilogy? Because I think this may be, aside from the fact that it's a reboot of a larger universe, it may be one of the best trilogies ever made, if not the most consistent ever made.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's all I had to say about that.
That's great. This was also the first film in the entire franchise to not credit Pierre Boulle, who wrote the original Planet of the Apes novel. But yeah, it's because, I think kind of because rather than taking inspiration from like the actual Planet of the Apes novel, it kind of took inspiration from something more like The Bridge on the River Kwai. Which is a book by author Pierre Boulle.
I didn't know he wrote that. That's crazy that those two stories are by the same guy.
Yeah, 11 years apart, but yeah, Pierre Bill's Wikipedia page literally says, who's a French novelist best known for two works, The Bridge on the River Kwai and Planet of the Apes.
That's interesting. All right, Richard, the question that everyone's tuned into this episode for, who would win in a fight between James Franco, Gary Oldman, and Woody Harrelson? The three A-list human stars of this franchise. Not the characters, the actors. Who wins?
Woody Harrelson.
You reckon? Yeah, you're probably right. I was going to go on a big rant about how Woody Harrelson's probably not as tough as his characters are, but even with that considered, he's still probably tougher.
Well, one thing that I always think about is that Dean Norris, Hank from Breaking Bad, talks about that, like, he's like, you think of like any actor like him who plays like tough guys. It's like, we were still the theater kids, you know?
Yeah, I think about that a lot as well.
Yeah, that's it. They're like, we were the ones who burst out into song and you know and got made fun of, got bullied. It's like, and now we're like these big tough guys. It's like, we're still actors, we're still theater kids.
Yeah, I think about that with like Robert De Niro and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially considering how good of an actor Robert De Niro is, it's like he's a theater kid though. They are all theater kids.
So the conversation you actually came here for, not this stupid fight question, is what does Alex Jones, the title boy, think of these? Like, because these are some of the most, like, I feel like some of the most contentious titles of the last decade.
They're so contentious, and that contention has reached the mainstream, which never happens with titles. No, I would bet that we are the largest social media presence that discusses titles. And we're not, my point is we're not large, right? Like, that's my point, is that, like, I don't think any other podcast, any other whatever, talks about titles as much as we do. We talk about titles a lot.
A lot on this podcast. So we have a segment called We Talk About Titles a Lot on this podcast, which I listened to a very early episode of our podcast recently, and I said, we talk about titles a lot on this podcast. And I was like, damn. How old of a saying? Like, it was Sister of the Traveling Pants. I re-listened to that.
Right. It became a segment, I think, in the Scary Movie episode. I think that was when I said, we're going to make this a segment.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So yeah, the title of this franchise: Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes. War for the Planet of the Apes was originally announced as War of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, Rise of the Planet of the Apes was originally announced as Caesar and then renamed to Caesar Rise of the Apes, then named to Rise of the Apes, then renamed to Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. So, let's discuss the problem at the heart of these contentious titles. Is that you're using the phrase "of the" twice, which is a very, already I feel like titles with "of the" in them is like, they're very easy to come up with, and now you're doing it twice, and I think it's for a production reason. I think it's because no one's going to know this is a Planet of the Apes movie if it's called Rise of the Apes. You know, I think that's the problem, is that you can't take the word planet out of it. The problem is I think especially Rise of the Planet of the Apes conveys the wrong thing. Rise of the planet? What? It's like it's talking about the planet that happens to be of the apes and not Rise of the Apes on the planet, which is not a better title. But
speaking of, like, you said that it's like the wrong one, because it's one of these things, and I think I might have mentioned it last week, or I at least mentioned it off pod to you, that and this was like a huge argument we had recently about Bad Boys. The third Bad Boys movie being called Bad Boys for Life is a dumb title because they're making a fourth one, and the fourth one should be called Bad Boys for Life, and the third one should just be called Bad Boys 3 or whatever. And you disagree with that you shouldn't save a title for a pun title, and like I say, Bad Boys for Life isn't like, you can't. It's not like you can't name your third one that, but if you're making a fourth one, not having it be your fourth one, because also the other thing, not only does it have 4 in the title, but it's also a very final title, especially when the first 2 are just called Bad Boys 2, and then you go, here's the final one, Bad Boys for Life, we're making another one. If you depending on what, like, if it, at least the next one's called Bad Boys Forever, which it might well be. But like, if the next one's called Bad Boys 4, say, or Bad Boys Resurrection, you would assume that Bad Boys for Life is the fourth one if you had the 4 DVDs kind of thing. And that's the thing, that Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a good
Bad Boys
title.
Resurrection?
Like, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a good name for a prequel to Planet of the Apes, but if you're making a second one, it becomes a bad title. And if your second one is called Dawn, it becomes a really bad title, because the Dawn happens before the Rise. I pitch to you that Dawn, War, and Rise are good, like, prefixes for these films. They're in the wrong order. The first one should be called Dawn. The second one is actually where the war takes place and is more of a war film. Then the third one should be Rise.
Interesting. It isn't. I think that's a good idea. So I'm not saying I disagree with your idea.
It sounds like you do.
I'm saying I think the problem at the heart of it is that it's saying too many words and saying of the twice. And
yeah, well, I don't have a problem with that. I wanted to talk about something else.
Sorry, who's the title boy? Who's the one that leads these conversations? You're totally right in the sense that it's a weird order to put them in, but I similarly have title alternatives for you.
Oh.
Okay, so I think the best title in the whole franchise, other than Planet of the Apes, is Beneath the Planet of the Apes, because I think that's very evocative. It's very interesting, and I always like titles that are like adding extra, like another word to recontextualize the title. Don't say like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, because it's got 2 of this in it, and that's what upsets me about it. Right? Okay. So here's my titles.
Can I guess one, or can I give
No,
one?
You can't guess one. This is my part. What?
Before the Planet of the Apes.
Before the Planet of the Apes should be the first one. I think that...
Was that actually... Yeah, that was your one?
Yeah, I think Before the Planet of the Apes is a great idea for the first one, because I think it tells everyone it's a Planet of the Apes prequel. And I think that's what it is. And I think that's actually a pretty cool title as well. And I think that's the obvious one that comes to mind. So here's my pitch. You call the first one Before the Planet of the Apes, right? I'm watching the second one. I'm watching Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I'm trying to think, and like I'm coming up with all these ideas that don't, like, I got into a Don't Cry For Me Argentina vibe, and I was like, cry for the Planet of the Apes? Like, you know, what am I thinking? Yeah. But here's what I think, and I think this is a pretty good title. I think, so Before the Planet of the Apes, the second one should be Divide the Planet of the Apes. Because it's about a division. It's about a schism through the characters. And it's not something the planet. It's not something for the something of the Planet of the Apes or whatever. So I think Before the Planet of the Apes, Divide the Planet of the Apes. It also conveys that very sequel-y idea of like, hey, everything you thought you knew, now it's in crisis. You know, like now it's there is shaky ground. The foundations are being divided. You know. And if the first one was called Before the Planet of the Apes and the second one was called Divide the Planet of the Apes, I wouldn't necessarily have too much of an issue with War for the Planet of the Apes. So we can keep that if we want, but other alternatives I thought of was if you've got Divide the Planet of the Apes, you could have Conquer the Planet of the Apes, or what I think is maybe more applicable to the film itself, Survive the Planet of the Apes. I think...
Yes, I like Survive the Planet of the Apes, but then I would just put the second one be War,
right?
Because the second one's more about humans versus apes, and it's has more conventions of a war film.
Correct.
I like the third one is like centered around a concentration camp, but yeah, I really like Survive the Planet of the Apes.
Nice. That was unexpected. I thought you'd be all over Divide, but guess
no.
Not.
I didn't want to say, but I don't like Divide.
That's crazy. You're crazy. It's such a good title.
I think it's because it's Divide is like it's like an order.
Right.
You're telling someone like division of the Planet of the Apes, I guess, would be the like, but it's of the as your problem. But yeah, and so I looked up divide synonyms. I couldn't find one because I get what you're trying to do, but I think it's like it's I can't think of the right grammatical terms, but it's like it's telling someone to do something rather than, whereas all the other ones are like noun. They're not nouns, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I mean, the point of these discussions is never. I've long since dropped the ambition of convincing you of my titles. It's more this is the creative offering to the podcast from my.
But no, but you get like my legitimate reasons. So like
I want to avoid. I want my ideal situation is that it's one word Planet of the Apes for each of them, but they create sentences. Right, before the Planet of the Apes survived the Planet of the Apes. So calling the second one War for the Planet of the Apes is still kind of like blah, blah, blah. You know, it's mouthy to me. Where like fight the Planet of the Apes, battle the Planet of the Apes, I would be okay. Destroy the Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Kill
the Planet of the... Well, even like I thought of, while I was watching it, before I landed on the brilliant idea of divide the Planet of the Apes, I thought of save the Planet of the Apes. Because of save the planet as a concept, and like sort of a that's a saying.
Eat the Planet of the Apes.
Eat the Planet of the Apes, and this adds two words, but peace on the Planet of the Apes. But I don't think that sounds like a very exciting second entry in a trilogy to be like, and now it's peace. But it does then is followed by war. So I was like, well, there you go. But I think
what about across the Planet of the Apes?
Like across the universe? This is the Beatles. I mean...
Across the Planet of the Apes is a good title.
I don't think for any of these specific movies.
If they're going to the sanctuary, the end, across would work for the fourth one.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Journey to the center of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. You're encroaching on my... Let's continue the franchise.
I'm sorry. Well, let's, by all means.
So, Continue the Franchise is a segment where we both pitch continuations of the franchise, as well as discuss any others that may be in the works. We've referenced a couple of times already that there's a fourth film in development. Wes Ball is confirmed to be directing that. He directed the Maze Runner movies, or like a couple of them at least.
Okay.
But he said it's going to honor Caesar's legacy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, well, we'll see, mate.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that I'm not angry that another one is being made, but I think more so we've had a couple of examples where like finding out a new movie is being made, we look at our franchise rankings and we're like, this is a very hallowed ground. And I think something like it seems more likely to me that a fourth reboot Planet of the Apes movie will be bad than a fourth Toy Story, So sure. I think it's because
none of these three should have been good already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so AJ, do you want to go first? Because yours is probably better than mine.
I doubt. Well, I think it has the potential, depending on what yours is. The real. So I'm going to explain everything, Richard. We stop recording after each hour to save everything. So you've missed about 10 minutes, 3 minutes.
I went to go pee.
Yeah. And when he came back, I was like, my Continue the Franchise isn't very good. So if yours is good, I should go first. And I maybe lead you up the garden path. It's not that mine's not good.
Because mine's real fucking good.
It's that I haven't done a lot of work and I maybe need some spitballing. And it's also very obvious.
I need some spitballing too.
I feel like mine is the first idea you come up with when asked to do a sequel.
Okay.
And that's like you remake Planet of the Apes in this timeline.
Okay. Do I need to Google actors who are the same age as Charlton Heston was when he made Planet of the Apes?
You kind of do. Like,
okay,
but they have to. How old? This won't. You can't. Like, this has to be how old they are now when Charlton Heston was whatever age, not how old is Charlton Heston.
He's dead. Look up dead actors. Actors who died in 2000.
So just to expound on that a little, like it seems. It's very strange to have a movie series like this, which everyone knows what it's leading up to, and then in its specific canon, not actually show that world. And, you're kneecapped by the fact that you can't reuse the twist, so there may be some recontextualizing that has to happen. But in broad strokes, the same story, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if Wes Ball's Planet of the Apes movie was just revisiting the Planet of the Apes or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Whatever it would be called. I will say this, I don't think it should just be called Planet of the Apes. I think you've got to give it,
Return to the Planet of the Apes.
Return to the Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Okay, so let me throw some actors at you. Daniel Gillies is the number one actor.
How old are we talking?
I don't know, 45.
Ah, what a shame. It's not. It's
43,
not yeah. Imagine that. Imagine if we had every.
He was Charlton Heston was 13.
He was. I find that very funny. Much in the same way, though, that like with every new actor we looked up, we were always risking it not landing on a 3. Like as we discovered that was happening. A 4th Planet of the Apes reboot movie is also like, don't test your luck. Don't look up another actor.
Okay, so Tobey Maguire pokes his head in again.
Harold. Okay.
Yeah, so 45-year-old we're looking at.
Right.
Jason Sudeikis.
Tobey Maguire is 45? Jesus Christ.
Charlie Day.
No, you know you're in the wrong genre of actor. We need to go into...
Okay, what about Sterling K. Brown?
Yeah, cool. What a great pick. I love Sterling K. Brown.
Casey Affleck.
Continues the tradition. Is Planet of the Apes as a whole the best franchise with the worst actors in it? You've got Charlton Heston, James Franco, who I thought of someone else before that was like cancelled, but maybe not. Oh, Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg's not cancelled, but he did.
Yeah, he just blinded Vietnamese
someone.
guy.
Yeah. So,
Glenn Howerton.
I mean, he would jump at it, wouldn't he? That dude's been trying to get out of his box for 10 years now.
Oh, actually, wait. If you thought Casey Affleck was bad, what about Danny Masterton?
You're reading out these names.
Yeah. Russell Brand.
I don't think he acts anymore.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was wrong. It was Earth all along and I feel terrible.
But I have saved our one actual good option for last.
Yep.
And that is Cillian Murphy.
Oh, of course it's Cillian Murphy, isn't it? Of course it is. Yeah, man. That's a legit. Do you agree? That's legit. Like,
yeah,
that's
why
who
I
it should
left
be.
it to last. Yeah. Should we check some 44 and 46-year-old actors just in case? Oh, because actually, I'll check 44-year-old actors just because that might have been the age Charlton Heston was when he filmed it. Mm-hmm. Ryan Reynolds.
Is it just me, or is 45 much older than 44? Do you know what I mean? I hear 45, I go, is Tobey Maguire 45? I hear 44, I go, yeah, Ryan Reynolds is 44.
Yeah. Benedict Cumberbatch, Orlando Bloom.
Well, Benedict Cumberbatch, you obviously get to play one of the monkeys because he's got such an interesting face.
John Bernthal.
I feel like an interesting face is crucial to mocap people.
Danny McBride.
See, I think Danny McBride is one of those comedy actors that has a serious role in him. I don't think it's this. I've heard his name thrown around for playing like Lobo in a live-action Lobo movie. I think that's a really good casting, but I don't know if this is the one. Oh, he was in an Alien movie, wasn't he?
Yeah. The Devil Wears Prada and Entourage's Adrian Grenier.
I wouldn't be shocked if he scored a role like this.
And the one legitimately all right casting would kind of today's Charlton Heston, Michael Fassbender.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's actually better than Cillian Murphy. because not only is he a great actor, he also famously stars in like terrible films or has for the last 3 or 4 films. So this could be like a good get for him because that would also bring up the prestige because as we said, these movies battle with trying to get you to take chimpanzees seriously.
Yeah,
and this is a way to do that is put Michael Fassbender in them. Michael Fassbender is today's Charlton Heston. Hopefully he won't be tomorrow's Charlton Heston, judging by where Charlton Heston went. But I think that's a good that's a good suggestion.
So my continue the franchises, I came up with a title, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work, or like it kind of betrays where we've come so far. It would have been a great title for the 6th original one.
Okay. So like one that doesn't exist is what you're saying.
Yeah, Fall of the Planet of the Apes. Like that feels like that needs to be what we'd see. But then if the 4th film in this franchise was Fall of the Planet of the Apes, I'd be like, that's a bummer.
Yeah. After Rise. You never want to fall after you've already risen.
Yeah. Head rush.
Yeah.
But so what I did instead was, because I was like, I thought we could kind of spitball how that could actually work. How we could kind of achieve that point, or that like a title that suits that without necessarily being the end of the Planet of the Apes as we know it. But so then I just kind of came up with like a bunch of other ones. Some I'm actually like, oh, this is a cool one. Some are just real stupid. So Across the Planet of the Apes was one of them. Fall of the Planet of the Apes, Death of the Planet of the Apes, Return from the Planet of the Apes, and then King of the Planet of the Apes. Funnily enough, I wasn't actually thinking of Return of the King when I wrote those two next to each other. I was trying to think of like, well, what's something you could do to honor Caesar's legacy? So I thought about like King of the Planet of the Apes or Martyr of the Planet of the Apes. Searching for the Planet of the Apes. Once Upon a Time on the Planet of the Apes. Back to the Planet of the Apes.
We're in this zone now, yes.
Yeah. And then
Planet of the Apes in space. Because it's a planet. I mean, it is in space.
Yeah. Collapse of the Planet of the Apes, Triumph of the Planet of the Apes, and Legacy of the Planet of the Apes.
Can I share with you a dream of mine?
Yeah, is it the Zack Snyder one you told me?
No. I'm not going to tell anyone about that dream. I had a sex dream about Zack Snyder. No.
You have to say that because it's better than what actually happened. That's less embarrassing.
I got inspired this by the Batman PS3 to 5 games, or PS3 to 4 games, the Arkham games. I really like the idea of doing 2 films and then doing a prequel, right? And for those who aren't aware, the Batman games are Batman Arkham Asylum. So it's set in Arkham Asylum. You're like, well, whatever. It's our boilerplate title. Then it's Batman Arkham City. And it's like, well, Arkham City's not a thing. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's upping the stakes, right? Yeah. And then the third one had the trouble of being like, it's got nothing to do with Arkham. But we want, it's got to be clear that it's in the same series. And they called it Batman Arkham Origins. And I thought, that's cool. It's the origins of the Arkham story. Right? And so I thought that was really nice. And then the fourth one is called Arkham Knight. And I think it should have been called Batman Arkham Legacy, because a legacy is the opposite of Origins. I want to make a series where there's one called whatever Origins and one called whatever Legacy. And because they're the opposite of each other.
And the first film's just called Whatever.
Yeah. Whatever Extreme, whatever Origins, whatever Legacy.
Just whatever legacy is left over.
What about the United States of the Planet of the Apes?
Yeah. I did actually come across, think of Journey to the Center of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Planet of the Apes.
Voyage of the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. That was the classic one. Everyone made that joke back in the day.
Nice.
When Dawn came out. Is that it?
Yeah, that's all mine.
Sick.
So now it's time to rank that franchise. So on our Letterboxd, we've got a list of every film franchise we have covered, and we accounted this as a separate one because I don't know what you fucking want.
I've worked it out. Here's where people's problems are. So for those who are new to this, we ranked all the franchises a while ago and stirred up a lot of upset when we ranked things that were like part of a same larger franchises, different franchises. The one that really hit close to home was we ranked Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit separately, but then also considered The Hobbit's legacy in how we ranked Lord of the Rings. I think the problem is not when we rank 2 iterations of the same franchise, it's when they share the same canon. I think that's the problem. So when we re-rank, we should, for example, delete The Hobbit. Whereas this, because it's a new canon, I think can exist as a separate franchise.
Well, I think the thing is that we're never going to make people happy. But
I disagree. Yeah. I think I can do it.
Okay. So one thing that I was interested by today, which is So I put like we've also got a list, which is every single film we've covered on Film Franchise Fortnights, and it's approaching 600, which is quite a significant milestone. But ranking them by like the Letterboxd, the average rating, so that's essentially just a measure of how good the film is, but like public by the public. That 6 franchises have all of their films appear in the top 100 films we've ever watched.
Wow.
Those 6 franchises are Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is the highest. All 3 films are in the top 10. Kill Bill.
Sure.
Toy Story, although the 4th one isn't in the top 100, but we didn't cover it on this podcast.
Right.
So that Back to the Future. Actually, I don't know if Toy Story 4 would fall in the top 100 because it's not on the list. Anyway, Back to the Future, 3 Colors trilogy, and the Apes Reboot Trilogy.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you've listed probably the best franchises we've covered there, right? Like, how many of those are are reflected in how we've ranked them? You know?
Yeah, and so I do want to talk about. Yeah, I think this will be an interesting, like, where does this go kind of thing.
So I'm not. It's not in front of me. You've got it in front of you. So at number 1 we've got Toy Story, the Toy Story series. That does now retrospectively include 4. I think we agreed when we ranked it. I think even if it didn't, or if it did, it should still deserves that place. I actually 4. I think 4 is great. And I think it deserves to be there. I know you have your reservations. The next, number 2 is Godfather, right?
Yeah.
And what's number 3?
The Trois Couleurs.
Right. And 4 is Back to the Future or Mission Impossible?
4 is Back to the Future, yeah.
And then 5 is Mission Impossible.
Yeah, sorry,
I could just be looking at it myself. Okay, so what I think we've got to consider for ranking the Reboot Trilogy is it's now a case of, like, how good is the best movie in these franchises? Because I would be hard-pressed to say that the Godfather trilogy, despite having 1 not as good out of 3 films, is worse than the Reboot Trilogy. Like, I think the Reboot Trilogy of Planet of the Apes probably doesn't reach the same heights consistently as the Godfather trilogy, despite having 1 dead limb on it, so to speak.
My thoughts. Honestly, this is, in terms of what a trilogy should be and the quality, consistency across films, this is the best trilogy we've ever watched. 2, if you said this is the best franchise we've ever watched, I wouldn't be like, no, it isn't.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I think... Fuck, this feels... I'm shaking with how climactic this feels. I'll say this. I don't think you're going to talk me out of Toy Story in the top spot, at least personally.
At least not today.
Yeah. I think my connection to Toy Story is considerably stronger than my connection to Planet of the Apes. I think we maybe will receive a lot of flack if we put it above Godfather, but I also agree that this is the best trilogy we've watched. I think it's second, Richard. I think we have to place the second. The only anchor on it is the same as that the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit has, is that it does have, like, maybe arguably it has other
decades
films
worth of
you should consider, but it also maybe doesn't. And also, all of those films aren't bad by any stretch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, we put the original Planet of the Apes 13th. Well, 13th now that this is above it. We put it 12th. Yeah, I mean, because also it's funny that, like, we haven't been, like, I feel like people listened to our Death Note episode were like, fuck, I need to watch Death Note. You guys really liked this. Whereas, like, I feel like we haven't been as, like, over the top praisey of this, but it's like, these films are just so fucking consistent and all of such a high quality. I gave these all 5 stars on Letterboxd.
And I wanted
to. yeah, which is the same thing. But I mean, I know I give away 5 stars a lot, but you'd be hard pressed to find another franchise which Toy Story and probably Back to the Future or 3 Colors. I might have given those all 5 stars, but yeah, this is an incredible franchise.
And I think
trilogy.
I say we rank it second, and with this proviso, right? I think Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 are better films than any of the Planet of the Apes Reboot Trilogy movies, but this is a better franchise.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and like there's things about because let's like we really need to get into the rank. I feel like you and I are in agreement, but we're just having to justify it to the audience. So we talk about like cultural significance and general consensus is also factored in. Our personal guilty pleasures can't boost a rotten franchise to the top. This isn't a case of that, but it's like that's I'm more saying that's doing a lot of heavy lifting with for the Godfather 3.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like you have got one of, if not the greatest films of all time, and one of, if not the greatest sequels of all time, and then a film that's not as bad as history claims it is. Let's put it up there kind of thing. Whereas this is like, these films are fucking incredible, all three of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm more viscerally excited about these films. And even the fact that they have an uphill battle to climb, and I mean, they succeeded it, you know, like that is part of what makes it so incredible.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. I want people to look at our franchise list and be like, really? I didn't see the second two. And it's like, no, like watch them. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'm happy. I'm at peace.
Cool. We're putting a second.
Whew! How good is Steve Zahn's performance as a primate? Like the way he blends talking with ooh, and all of a sudden he's a chimp again, you know?
Yeah. All right, so that only leaves one segment to do. Do you want to talk about?
Do I want to explain this fucking monolith of a segment?
Oh,
all right, so
I've been revisiting the Planet of the Grapes tonight. And I'm now just pouring out the last of an entire bottle of wine, which I've drunk.
The last of the summer wine.
As this podcast has gone on.
All right, so
because I know what's coming.
Usually at this point in the show, we go, all right, it's time to select out what franchise we're going to cover in a fortnight's time. But it is that time of year again. It's time for Film Franchise Fortnights Redux, which initially started about 3 years ago as the concept was 3 years or 2 years ago. This is the third year we've done it.
Yeah.
So it started as being basically like, hey, our first year when we were still figuring out how to do this podcast, some of the franchises we covered then probably suffered then because we hadn't refined it to the science we've refined it to now. And so let's redo them. And this year, we opened that up to season 2. We said the first 2 years, our patrons, if you donate $1 or more on our Patreon, patreon.com/ColdPopture, you can vote on, well, you can't anymore, but you could vote on which franchise from the first 2 years you want us to redo. And we had
how did we do that?
4 rounds, so we basically, we randomly
Should we go through what those 4 rounds were to build even more suspense?
Okay.
So so we randomly generated groups of franchises, 9 to 10 franchises each group, and then those were voted on. The winner of each group went to a final poll. So the first group was Jurassic Park, Nymphomaniac, Back to the Future, Dumb and Dumber, Shanghai Noon, Shanghai Nights, Lilo and Stitch, Ace Ventura, 101 Dalmatians, and Spider-Man.
Now,
Jurassic Park took that out.
Jurassic Park 1, leaving the Back to the Future Redux community in shambles.
The entire reason we did a Redux was because we assumed you guys would want a better Back to the Future episode.
And Back to the Future, year to year, has been the dark horse of the Redux culture. I'm making it sound like this is much bigger than it is. Like these communities and this culture. Yep. So Jurassic Park advanced to the next round.
Next up, we had Transformers, SpongeBob, Red Curtain, which is a franchise, Shrek, Twilight, Boondock Saints, Freddy vs. Jason, which we would be covering for the third time, sorry. Bad Moms, X-Men, and Jungle Book, and that was won by X-Men.
X-Men, a grassroots campaign to get X-Men.
The kind of the thoughts behind X-Men is that we've had a few films. Well, we have actually covered them for their film franchise follow-ups on the Patreon, but yeah, this people thought this would be now that's out of the out of Fox's hands,
Yeah,
it might be good.
now's
to
a
do
good
it.
time to cover it. So Richard, those were both two sets of very, very crazy, very good franchises that I'm sure people would love to hear us do again. It can't possibly get better than those two rounds. Read me what round 3 consisted of.
So round 3 was Medea, The Land Before Time, Dungeons and Dragons, Ghostbusters, Lady and the Tramp, The Evil Dead, The Mummy, Beethoven, and Godzilla.
Which is, now that I've phrased it the way I did, I want to rephrase it and say, none of those are better than the franchises we just discussed, but I think they'd make better episodes. And these are like our classics that we assumed this would be the bloodbath round.
Well, good, because it's interesting because there was already talk of The Mummy for Mummy, that people wanted us to do the Brendan Fraser films. But then, Beethoven is like a classic episode. It'll be fun to revisit that. Godzilla is one of those, like, similar to Freddy vs. Jason. But by then, that was kind of one of the first episodes we did where we went film by film rather than just saying, these are all the films, let's have a general discussion. Ghostbusters is a classic. That's probably the first good episode of the podcast, I would say. The Land Before Time and Medea and Dungeons and Dragons are all ones that, like, if I was a fan of a podcast where they watch, and like the part of the appeal is they sometimes have to watch terrible films, you vote for those ones to put them through that torture again.
And listeners, I never want to see Medea again for the rest of my life. My God.
I feel that way about The Mummy.
So we threw two caveats into this poll, though, was that the Godzilla films would now be split up differently. They'd be over multiple weeks, and we'd also fold King Kong into one of those weeks. It was going to be something like, was it 7 weeks of film franchise?
6 or 7 weeks.
6 or 7 weeks of film franchise Fortnights, which would cover the Godzilla eras as we did them the first time, but also involve King Kong and then the new era, which
the legendary Monsterverse.
Which we've only ever covered on. We actually haven't. Have we covered that on Patreon? We haven't covered.
We covered Godzilla 2014. We did King of the Monsters on Patreon. Yeah. We haven't discussed Kong Skull Island, although there is an episode devoted entirely to it. I am not on it. I have not listened to it.
Okay.
But maybe I will now because I've actually seen Kong Skull Island.
And we also said that so when we say The Mummy, what we're actually referring to is the 6 Universal Mummy movies from like the 30s to the 50s, I think, was that original run made by Universal. But we said if this wins, we will do not only the Universal Mummy movies, but the following week we will do the Hammer Mummy movies, which you've never heard of, I've never heard of. No one knows what the Hammer Mummy movies are.
The Hammer Mummy movies are the ones with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
I did not know that. There you go. And then we'll, of course, also do the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, and we'll tack on the Tom Cruise Mummy movie onto that. And then we'll do...
He wishes there was more than one.
And then we'll do the Scorpion King spin-off, which is the spin-off to The Mummy Returns. So this is going to be 4 weeks of Mummy...
4 episodes,
4 episodes of film franchise Fortnights focused on all the different iterations of The Mummy and which franchise won this bloodbath of a poll.
This poll was won by The Mummy, so The Mummy advanced to the next round.
All right, and the last round, Richard, we've been building up. It's unstoppable. Nothing stops this train. Tell me the immaculate, the enticing franchises, the likes of which the thought of doing a redux would be intoxicating to our listeners. Tell me what round 4 consisted of.
Kill Bill, Monsters Inc., Divergent, Lethal Weapon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Daddy's Home, The Raid, Happy Feet, and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Fun fact, 6 of those 10 are 2 film franchises. This was the one that after the franchise, the list that The Mummy won, and that was like, fuck, like, there was like a lot of weight behind Godzilla, a lot of weight behind The Mummy. This one came out, people were like, well, this is the duds, isn't it? People are like, well, I don't care.
This is quite frankly the worst poll I've ever seen. And I mean in terms of every poll I've ever seen ever. I've never been less
and
that
includes POLE polls and people from Poland.
This includes like who I voted for in the last election.
Yeah.
This is the worst poll I've ever seen. And through sheer memery and tomfoolery, what won this poll?
Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Which is hilarious because round 5 consisted of the like watershed franchises of Jurassic Park, X-Men, The Mummy, and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. A franchise I probably didn't think about for all of last year. I reckon I went a full year without thinking about this franchise.
To be fair, and this is I shared this on the Discord, but this is a very fun piece of behind the scenes trivia, is that anytime either of us, and this is our Twitter DMs are entirely this message, which has been seen and not replied to.
By several potential guests.
Explaining the concept of the podcast, and we always say we've covered from the mammoth 31 film Godzilla franchise to the 2 Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants films. Those are always the 2 examples we use without fail. Even when I'm just telling people in my personal life, it's so ingrained in me to use those 2 as examples.
Is it because on a philosophical level, every franchise fits somewhere between those 2 on a spectrum, whatever that spectrum is?
Yeah, sure. But I think it's also that we did those around the same time. And that would have been, tell you what, that would have been the message that we sent to Gus Johnson to get in on Jurassic Park, because we will have just done both of those.
Did we? I feel like we hadn't done Godzilla by that
point. Let me have a look 1 second.
We might
yeah, Jurassic Park predates Godzilla by about 4 months.
So we wouldn't have sent that message to Gus Johnson then.
You're right.
Anyway, these polls went head to head. There was basically, I thought it was going to come down to The Mummy and X-Men, but then something amazing happened. A rise of the Planet of the Pants happened. I think more born out of people not wanting the other franchises to win. Like, it was I don't need X-Men to win, I just need The Mummy to lose kind of situation, where a massive, almost Bernie Sanders-esque movement of people who a lot of people are throwing their hat in the ring for Sister of the Traveling Pants. I don't think it's because they want another episode. I think they're gutted with how the polls turned out and want a little drop of chaos in their poll. And I can understand why it's.
Oh, that's what I wanted.
I can understand why it's very funny that. To an outsider, that poll must look like it drops off the deep end very hard from going from those 3 franchises and then to Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. But Richard, tell me the percentage of the winner and then tell me what the winner is.
Okay, so it's worth pointing out as well that the final poll, you could only vote for one. So it very much was a case of like, you have to, stand your ground on the one. So with 45% of the final vote, The Mummy is going to be... second place was Sister of the Traveling Pants at 25.
What a great result for Sister of the Traveling Pants, because I tell you what, it's never getting that far in Redux again, is it? Like, there's no way.
What? Next year? I don't know.
But maybe, but only because of this poll. If this poll
do you want to talk about like what happened in the Discord this week?
There was just a massive movement for Sister of the Traveling Pants.
We had a like everyone on the Discord's names have been changed to
have pants in their name somewhere.
To have pants in their names, yeah.
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 And now I'm going to go and remove any trace of the word pants from any of the messages as a clue as to what the result. I mean, people can still see the result.
Yeah, people know what happened.
So that means that not next week. Next week we're doing the return of the self-indulgent film franchise Fortnights trivia quiz.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
So stay tuned for that, and feel free to jump on the Discord and submit some questions for our quiz. It'll be a lot of fun, silly time. I might get a little bit tipsy I might get on the Planet of the Grapes myself for that episode. And we're going to do another quiz. That'll be next week. But the week after will be the redux of the Universal Mummy films, which is 6 films. Then are we doing it week to week, or do we?
We'll have to play it by ear.
It may be fortnight to fortnight, which will be insane because that's 8 weeks of one franchise.
Hey, that's what the fans wanted. Apparently,
you're so salty. It's great.
I am
excited.
I'm so undeniably like not stoked.
I will say this because it didn't win. Why the fuck do people want us to do X-Men? I never want to talk about the X-Men films again.
I never want to talk about the Mummy. Oh god, I just know, like, the idea of you sent a picture recently that I think it was a Facebook memory that popped up where you had you're holding a Blu-ray of the Scorpion King 4. Yeah. And I was like, that looks terrible. I was like, I'm gonna have to fucking watch that soon. And it was like this moment of like, what am I doing with my life?
Well, we've had that before we've had that recently on the podcast. Watching fucking Most Vertical Primate. Like, they're gonna probably all be better than that film.
I would rather watch every Barbie movie again than watch a single Mummy movie.
Wow. You are being ridiculous, and I want you to bottle this energy and bring that to the episode. Please. Very exciting stuff.
Like, this is going to ruin my life for a month.
Very exciting stuff on the horizon of film franchise Fortnights. Richard, at the very least, you're going to passively enjoy the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, and even the original
That's
Scorpion
the thing.
King
I
movie.
don't even... I've seen the original, the Brendan Fraser movie once. I watched it during lockdown, I think. I watched it last year sometime. It's fine.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Look, everybody, thank you very much for listening.
I'm going to hate every single one of these films just to spite you.
Excellent. I think that's good podcasting. So stay tuned for the quiz next week, and if you enjoyed this episode, then please consider liking us on all the pages. Should have done this much earlier in the episode because I think we're well into only diehard listener territory now, but if this is your first Cult Option podcast, please consider following us or subscribing to us on all the different places. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, I nearly said SoundCloud, throwback. We're on Acast now, actually. There's 2 YouTube channels, Cult Option and Cult Option again, and we're also on Discord. You can find a link to the Discord in the show notes, as well as a link to the Patreon, patreon.com/cultpopture. And stay tuned as well, actually, because we still need to do our post-credit scene after this music ends, where you can tune in, and we'll explain what that is in just a moment. But as they say on the Planet of the Apes, Richard, arrivederci. Technically, they do say arrivederci on the Planet of the Apes because it's our planet, and they say arrivederci on Earth.
Probably just leave it on my joke.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the post-credits scene. This is a segment at the end of each episode where if you donate $5 or more a month at patreon.com/cultpopture, you get to give us something to talk about in the post-credits scene. Richard, lay it on me, baby.
Alrighty, today's post-credit scene comes to us from Dan Connell, who writes... Dan. Can you please finish the M-blank-P franchise alphabet? You left off before F, and it was a real highlight. So now, how many? So 21 more. Most. Do you want to explain where this comes from?
Okay, so for the MVP movie and our Continue the Franchise, we just started pitching, changing the middle initial for different sequels. And I was like, I need to remember to write notes for this post-credit scene. I didn't. What a terrible post-credit scene to come at the end of a very long
What a terrible
outro.
Post-credits, Dan.
No, not at all. Just to come at the end of an episode which had 20 minutes of admin at the end of
and
it.
when I'm
all right,
drunk. I'm fucking wasted.
Quick fire round. Give me a letter. I'll give you a letter.
Okay, F.
MFP?
Yeah.
Most famous primate.
Nice. It's your turn.
MEP?
That is not what comes
What's
after
the
F in
order?
the alphabet. G.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Googling the alphabet. All right, I've got it in front of me. MGP.
Most grand primate. He becomes a royal.
Okay. It's your turn.
H. MHP.
MHP. Most hairy primate.
I knew you were going to say that.
MIP.
MIP.
Okay. It's your turn.
J.
MJP. Michael Jackson's primate. It's about Bubbles was the name.
Oh, but yeah, fuck yeah. And Tyker's making like a stop motion film about it.
It's inexplicably called MJP. All right, Richard. MKP.
Most kills per primate. Per primate.
All right, your turn.
L.
MLP, Martin Luther Primate.
Right, your turn.
MMP. Wait, we already did
So,
this one.
okay, in New Zealand, the way we elect our government.
It's called MMP. All right, MNP, most notorious primate.
MOP, mop. It's just Joy, that movie with by David O. Russell with Jennifer Lawrence. But
Okay.
they named it after the product, not the person.
All right, MPP, most primate. That's right, everybody. We're going to find out what is the most primate of all the primates.
MQP.
Mm-hmm.
Most qualifying primate.
Nice. MRP, most rambunctious primate.
MSP, most saucy primate.
Oh, MTP, most tantalizing, most titillating. I feel like Jeff Goldblum. Ooh, most titillating primate.
Most the police.
Most the police.
MUP, most underwhelming primate.
Whoa. MVP, most voluptuous primate. It's not going anywhere better from this.
The MVP is already the name of the franchise.
Oh my god! I'm in like the depths, the bowels of cognitive dissonance right now. That I could not even remember that MVP is the actual one.
Like the fact that saying MVP didn't like trigger alarm bells in your head.
Incredible! What an incredible thing to happen to me.
MWP, most walking primate.
Okay, now MXP is already one.
There we go. I was waiting for that.
So it's MYP, most YOLO primate. I'm bringing back YOLO.
Most zebra primate.
fuck you, ideas. It's most zebra primate.
Well, I hope you said that was a real highlight for you, Dan. I hope this continued to be a real highlight for you.
I pray your day is bright. It's highlighted completely. All right, everybody.